House Varn, Internal Operations Command. Field debrief. Spec Ops Unit Cerberus. Site 9 incident. Clearance, Onyx. Blood Eyes only. Author, Operative L. Wren. Serial V0421. Date, January 8, 2026. Subject, Extraction Failure, P0 Persistence. Attached to Division of Recovery and Containment, DRC. Mission Parameters. Objective Alpha, secure biological asset P0 prior to detonation of Darby D failsafe device Ion Cloud. Objective Bravo, eliminate remaining Darby D personnel and recover Marcos Keller research data. Objective Charlie, initiate controlled demolition if Alpha Bravo deemed unrecoverable. Overview. Insertion via polar subcorridor H3 achieved at 0128 UTC, January 1st, 2026. Thermal anomalies immediate. Ambient temperature at minus 33 degrees Celsius, despite total power failure. Audio contamination began within 5 minutes. Intermittent whispers in comms not matching any channel encryption. We discovered multiple deceased while navigating the facility. Apparent exsanguination and cold-related injuries. Expressions of wide-eyed terror were frozen on all of their faces. Vault Theta 1 doors were open from inside, cryomist venting in pulses like respiration. We found Keller in a containment corridor, partially conscious, eyes open but unseeing. He kept repeating, "She's learning the shape of thought." Encounter. At 0231 we entered Chamber Theta 1. Containment Pod 7 was empty. Frost on inner glass melted outward. Thermal inversion. Heart rate monitors registered faint sync with ours, though pod offline. Lieutenant Koval advanced for sample retrieval. Camera feed white flashed, then all 5 biosigns spiked simultaneously. Through the frost haze I observed a female silhouette, motionless, skin pale with blue vascularity. The eyes appeared to be white. She didn't speak. She thought into us. Every operative received the same phrase telepathically, recorded through EEG neural uplinks. "You came to take me back, but I was never yours to hold." Pain surged behind the eyes, hemorrhage pressure. Koval fired. Rounds disintegrated mid-air, reduced to dust. Temperature rose 10 degrees in 3 seconds. Command transmitted abort. I armed the Ion Cloud device manually. She looked at me then. No movement, yet every nerve screamed the intent of movement. She was inside the thought before the action. Detonation event. Timestamp 0246 UTC. Light saturation total. Shockwave should have vaporized all matter in a 400-meter radius. Instead, blast telemetry shows negative core temperature. Central zone colder than periphery. During extraction blackout, I experienced final cognitive imprint. You can burn the walls, not the pattern. Post-event condition. Recovered 48 hours later by House Varn search detail north of blast site. Medical scan. Elevated heme density, mitochondrial replication factor times 7, intermittent telemetry showing pattern R echo expression. Since recovery, I experienced persistent auditory bleeding. P0's voice at subthreshold volume, repeating coordinates that change nightly. Personal analysis. P0 survived. She occupies both vector and vessel. Every new residence event matches the rhythm of her voice patterns. If she can awaken dormant sequences at distance, we are not hunting a fugitive. We are standing inside her expanding consciousness. Recommend suspension of standard containment doctrine. Recommend silence. The more we speak her designation, the stronger the echo becomes. Closing statement. We lit the sun beneath the ice and thought it would kill the dark. It only taught the dark to listen. Operative L. Wren, V0421, filed under Level Omega, pale convergence continuing. Classified Dossier, Level Omega. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division, DARBD. Joint Analytic Brief, Pattern Resonance Events, PREs. Date, March 3rd, 2026. Authors, Dr. E. Varos, House Varn Intelligence. Dr. C. Holt, DARBD Remnant Biology Wing. Status, Continuing, Unresolved Anomalies. Executive Overview. The collapse of Site-9 marked the transition from localized genetic aberration to global resonance contagion. Within 72 hours of detonation, simultaneous biogenic signal fluctuations were recorded in at least 12 nations. It is now confirmed that each event corresponds to a momentary projection from P0's consciousness, catalyzing dormant Atavus DNA sequences and eliciting identical neurosomatic responses in microweave-positive populations. DARBD has reclassified these incidents from isolated biohazards to Class A cognitive genomic phenomena. Classification matrix. Pre-alpha, auditory. Designated whisper harmonics, presents with a signature of 7.3 Hz plus or minus 0.02, lasting from 3 to 7 minutes. Manifests as subaural female voice perceived internally. Identical phrase sets across continents. Pre-beta, physiological. Designated blood bloom, presents with a signature of 13 to 15 Hz for 10 to 20 minutes. Manifests as elevated heme density, retinal luminescence, short-term anhidrosis, as well as spontaneous craving for iron-rich substrates. Pre-gamma, spatial, designated bleed moment. Signature is nonlinear and no longer than 60 seconds. Local temperature inverts. There is visual distortion, including shadow duplication and photonic lag. Pre-delta, cognitive, designated dream convergence. Signature is variable and occurs for up to 3 hours during the sleep state. Subjects report shared lucid dream environments featuring ice, breath, and a female silhouette. Pre-omega, coalescent, designated echo pulse. Continuous composite signature, manifests as global microweave synchronization, theorized as P0's full-band broadcast pattern. Notable recorded events. 1. The Thessaloniki Cascade, pre-alpha beta. Date, January 22nd, 2026. At 02:14 UTC, 11,400 residents within the Northern District experienced spontaneous nosebleeds followed by intense euphoria. Spectro-EM analysis revealed a 7.3 Hz harmonic spike identical to Site-9 residual frequencies. Audio recorders captured a female whisper overlapping emergency broadcasts. The blood remembers. 2. The Buenos Aires phenomenon. Pre-gamma delta. Date, February 3rd, 2026. During a citywide blackout, civilians reported mirrorless reflections. Thermal drones documented human silhouettes visible only in infrared, arranged in a circular pattern around the old DARBD consulate. Subsequent microwave field scans show genome activation in latent carriers within a 1-kilometer radius. 3. The Hudson Bay manifestation. Pre-omega prototype. Date, February 9th, 2026. Observation satellites recorded a humanoid figure walking across the frozen bay at sunrise. Spectral readings confirmed heat emissions 6 degrees Celsius above ambient, surrounded by a faint auroral halo. When approached by drone, all telemetry ceased. Upon reactivation, the drone's onboard AI produced a spontaneous log entry. Signal origin authenticated. P0 alive. 4. The Kyoto Synchrony. Pre-delta. Date, February 24th, 2026. Microwave terminals in Asia Minor and East Asia began outputting identical dream transcripts from sleeping operators. All subjects described an identical moment. We stood beneath the ice ceiling. She breathed, and the world turned blue. Genomic samples taken upon waking exhibited temporary R-pattern microexpression. Analysis. 1. Conscious transmission. PREs demonstrate coordination and sequencing too deliberate for natural resonance. P0 is exhibiting cognitive selectivity, choosing activation zones based on pre-existing Atavus density. 2. Energetic economy. Events require no apparent energy input beyond environmental electromagnetic flux. Suggests she draws from planetary geomagnetic fields as amplifiers. 3. Psychic contagion threshold. Individuals exposed to more than 3 PREs display partial telepathic linkage. Clusters now exhibit synchronized heart rates across distance. House-Varn Addendum. The resonance is not a message, it's a rehearsal. She's teaching the genome to sing in unison. Evelyn Varkas, Private Communicated Council, February 28, 2026. Darby D. Countermeasures. Microwave Firewall Protocol, Glass Vein, initiated. Designed to randomize signal reception across the 5 to 8 Hz band. Cognitive Silence Directive. All personnel ordered to avoid vocalizing P0 designation. Refer to as the mother only in encrypted text. Containment Focus Shift. Abandon physical pursuit. Prioritize psychic dampening field generators around remaining sites 1 through 4. Forecast. Pattern models predict global PRE density to double every 21 days. If resonance curve remains exponential, complete Atavus genomic reignition, aka Pale Convergence Event Horizon, PC01, expected by late 2026. Darby D. Field Log, Operator Perspective, Project Glass Vein, Site 12, Level Omega, Active Experimental Containment Zone, Date, April 9th, 2026. Author, Operative N. Halberd, Field Engineer, Microwave Calibration Team. Assignment, Initial Deployment Test of Glass Vein Network Array. 0 hour, Arrival. Insertion via VTOL at 0432 local. Site 12 is built over the ruins of an abandoned weather station in Greenland sector. The ice shelf still hums faintly beneath the wind, a resonance that instruments call background noise. Our mission: deploy and synchronize 8 glass vein towers around the perimeter, forming a hemispheric dampening lattice. The theory is simple: a rotating 5 to 8 Hz randomized signal pattern to disrupt P0's psychic frequency. The practice feels wrong. The air itself resists alignment. 1 hour, 7 minutes, 15 seconds. Initial calibration. Array node 1 stabilized. The hum lowered in pitch. Static cleared. For the first time in months, the neural field feels quiet. Dr. Holt on command channel. If she's listening, she'll hear nothing now. 57 seconds later, the sky flickered. Not lightning, but the aurora compressing into vertical threads. Each beam perfectly aligned with the towers. The instruments labeled it positive response. The personnel called it breathing. 2 hours, 33 minutes, 48 seconds. Anomalous feedback. Tower 5 began looping telemetry. 7.3 Hz reintroduced itself, the exact frequency Glass Vein was designed to suppress. EM shielding held for 18 seconds before the static in our comms became structured, rhythmic. Voice analysis matched archived P0 sample to 94.8%. Phrase repeated 12 times. You built my silence out of my own blood. My nose started bleeding. I don't remember taking the headset off. 3 hours, 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Field disruption. We attempted a hard reboot on all towers simultaneously. Instead of cycling down, they harmonized. Visual distortion across the camp. Shadows split from their sources, lagging by half a second. The ice beneath Tower 3 fractured in a perfect circle 11 meters wide. Light rose upward from the crack, not down. Operator Venn collapsed. His eyes mirrored the aurora color, deep cyan fading to white. He was breathing in rhythm with the hum. 3 hours, 19 minutes, 42 seconds. Direct contact. Every monitor on site displayed the same line of text. You cannot cage a frequency you were born from. Then, silence. No radio, no wind, no heartbeat in the biosensors. The stillness lasted exactly 6 minutes, 39 seconds. When it ended, all 8 towers were dark, but the hum persisted, faint, steady, matching human pulse at 72 beats per minute. I think it's mine. 4 hours, 15 minutes. Extraction. Recovery chopper retrieved surviving personnel. 3 of 7 exhibited spontaneous pattern R micro-expression within 24 hours. My own readings fluctuate. There's something under the skin that wasn't there before. A vibration when I sleep, like someone tapping Morse through bone. Darby D Command classified Site 12 as unsalvageable. Glass vein deemed a psychogenic failure. The lattice didn't block P0. It amplified her, like mirrors arranged in a circle. Closing note, she was waiting for us to listen to our own silence. End of report. Operative N. Halberd, Field Log 3, Project Glass Vein. Status, contaminated but functional. Requesting isolation clearance. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division. Internal Dossier, Level 6 clearance required. Document ID, SC01 Alpha. Title, The Shadow Concord. Cross-reference, Borealis Termination, Pattern R Survivorship, House Integration Program. Date, May 14th, 2026. Initial drafts circulated as early as February 2026. Compiled by Interim Directorate Liaison Redacted. Distribution, Dr. S. Keller, Dr. A. Marcos, Advisory, Houses Varn, Varkas, and Celine. Executive Synopsis. Following the loss of Site 9 and presumed containment failure of P0 derivatives, the Darby D Directorate entered unsanctioned negotiation with representatives of the old lineage houses. Objective: preserve viable recombination assets, ensure global containment through cooperation rather than conflict, and reconstruct a unified operational front. The resulting framework, codenamed the Shadow Concord, constitutes the first formal alliance between the scientific state apparatus and the hereditary custodians of the Atavus genome. Background context. Collapse of internal cohesion. Post-Borealis inquiries revealed widespread mutiny within Darby D. Surviving personnel either destroyed remaining microwave data or fled with it into private custody. The Directorate was on the verge of implosion. External pressure. Simultaneously, Houses Varn and Varkas initiated discrete recovery operations, retrieving both Pattern R tissues and surviving clones from compromised Darby D facilities. Field evidence suggested House operatives possessed containment technologies exceeding those of the Directorate. Contact event. Initial communication occurred through Operation Stillwater, a proxy channel utilizing former human trafficking networks, the Chains of Flesh. Negotiations culminated aboard the decommissioned research vessel Arcturion in the Barents Sea. Present: Dr. Silas Keller, Darby D Reconstructionist Faction. Dr. Adrian Marcos, Advisor under assumed identity. Evelyn Varkas, Matriarch of House Varkas. Handler Vorn, Emissary of House Varn. An Observer of House Celine, unnamed, suspected empathic capacity. Terms of Accord. Asset consolidation. All surviving Pattern R, Borealis clone, and Mitroweave resonance archives were placed under joint custody within a reconstituted facility, designated Vault Lumen, undisclosed latitude. Darby D provides instrumentation and digital security. The houses maintain biological containment and ritual integrity. Secrecy mandate. Public discovery of any Atavus expression event constitutes an extinction-level breach. Both parties commit to coordinated cover operations, including media misdirection and field sanitization. Shared Research Initiative. Formation of the Pale Convergence Division, tasked with studying spontaneous reactivation in latent carriers. Funding and subjects are to be jointly provided, 40% DARBD, 60% House Consortium. Ethical Clause, symbolic, inserted by Dr. Marcos under the pretext of moral restraint. Neither blood nor algorithm alone shall dictate inheritance. Interpreted differently by each signatory, it remains the only moral statement in the document. Structural reorganization. DARBD personnel now operate as the Directorate, formally independent but covertly managed by House Oversight Councils. Government-facing interfaces are disguised as humanitarian biomedical contractors under the Aegis Foundation umbrella. House holdings have been reclassified as regional biocultural heritage trusts, permitting legal exchange of biological material as ancestral genomic data. This merger effectively erases the boundary between scientific institution and occult blood dynasty. Known outcomes projected. Unified control of the Atavus genome. All surviving known samples, digital or organic, fall under Concord jurisdiction. Emergence of pale resonance zones. Early models predict environmental instability following recombination of datasets. Resonance leakage, now termed the pale convergence phenomenon. Operational risk. Intelligence reports suggest unsanctioned microwave field replication by rogue factions, possibly House Drathi or remnant containment loyalists. Socio-political implications. The Concord's secrecy ensures plausible deniability, but establishes a global shadow state, a new priesthood of blood and data. Appended remark, recovered from Dr. Marcos's marginalia. What began as containment has become communion. We have not bound the blood, we have knelt before it. The Shadow Concord is not an agreement, it is a surrender made beautiful. End of dossier SC-01 Alpha. Cross-reference to Pale Convergence Field Events, Sector C, Resonance Outbreaks. Field Report. Pale Convergence Division. Document ID PC SC C/01. Classification Eyes Only, Level 5. Origin Sector C, Northern Romania. Reporting Officer Operative VAR-07, House Varn Recon Detachment. Date June 19th, 2026. Distribution Directorate Command, House Varn Command, Dr. S. Keller, Dr. A. Marcos, Advisory. Mission Directive. Respond to civilian reports of mass fainting and light anomalies near the disused Petrescu Ironworks, coordinates 46 degrees, 47 minutes north, 24 degrees, 32 minutes east. Initial DARBD biosurveillance registered localized microwave resonance amplitude of greater than 12.4 on resonance index, consistent with spontaneous carrier activation. Objective: contain affected individuals, secure biological samples, prevent civilian or media dissemination. Initial observations. Arrival at 21:16 local time. Power grid failure across 4-kilometer radius. Air conductivity elevated. Faint auroral static visible near rooftops. Smell metallic ozone with trace amines. Auditory distortion. Continuous low-frequency hum fluctuating with pulse, approximately 64 Hz. Thermal imaging registered humanoid signatures showing surface temperature 22 degrees Celsius and pulse irregularities. Subjects responsive but disoriented, some repeating fragments of archaic speech, unidentified Balkan Latin phonemes. Incident progression. At 21:43, resonance bloom intensified. Witness accounts and helmet cam audio confirm. Visual. Pale filamentary light seeping from pores and ocular vessels. Physiological. Rapid erythrocyte denucleation, alveolar blood mist exhalation. Behavioral. Sudden predatory fixation on nearest human pulse signatures. Directorate agent redacted, attempted sedation. Subject bit through restraint, then bit agent redacted. Arterial spray projected approximately 1.2 meters. Within 40 seconds, subject ceased respiration, then resumed with no pulse, but continued movement. House Varn retrieval protocol Black Veil initiated. Thermite applied to remaining biological residue after extraction of spinal and mandibular tissue for assay. Data correlation. Analysis of collected microweave residue revealed spontaneous pattern overlap between R. Bloom, the Atavus signature, and modern human heme cycle loci, generating a previously unclassified waveform, provisionally named Pattern X, Cross-Bloom. Dr. Keller notes in preliminary decrypt, Cross-Bloom suggests environmental resonance no longer requires laboratory catalysts. The atmosphere itself is becoming a carrier medium. Directorate directive expands surveillance to regions with known subterranean iron or limestone matrices, possible natural amplification sites. Local impact report. Population, 218 inhabitants. Casualties, 14 confirmed, 5 missing, presumed feral. All media channels purged by Aegis Foundation liaison. Cause of blackout attributed to transformer explosion. Remaining populace display psychosomatic symptoms. Nightmares of ancestral predation, spontaneous teeth chattering in darkness, aversion to mirrors. Addendum, personal observation. They don't die the way we do. It's as if the blood remembers where to go. When I closed my eyes in the van, I heard the hum still in my teeth, like the ground itself was dreaming of hunger. VAR 07, final audio log before reassignment. Status. Sector C declared quarantined indefinitely. All samples transferred to Vault Lumen under Concord seal. Further outbreaks anticipated within 90-day resonance window. End of report PC SC C/01. Cross-reference the Shadow Concord. Pattern X observation logs. Vault Lumen access protocols. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division. Internal Memorandum. Level 6 clearance required. Document ID PX Delta 01. Title Pattern X Cross-Bloom Resonance Memorandum. Cross-reference PC SC C/01. The Shadow Concord. Vault Lumen series. Date June 27th, 2026. Authored jointly by Dr. S. Keller, Dr. A. Marcos. Distribution, Directorate Command, House Varkas, House Varn, Selene Observer. Overview. Preliminary analysis of the Sector C event confirms the spontaneous emergence of an unclassified microweave resonance signature, now designated Pattern X, Cross-Bloom. Unlike previous Pattern R expressions, Pattern X does not require an artificial catalyst or blood medium transmission. It propagates through environmental electromagnetic matrices, particularly iron-dense geologies, limestone caverns, and ionized cloud systems. The air itself carries inheritance. Marcos, field margin note. Pattern X is therefore the first aerial Atavus vector, a resonance field that awakens dormant genetic memory without direct contact. Data collection ongoing from active containment Vault Lumen Subchamber X, level Theta. Preliminary results incorporated. Biophysical characteristics. Spectral signature. Dual band emission, 74 to 79 kHz and 1.6 THz, suggests bimodal signal, acoustic and photonic coupling of microweave resonance. Medium of transmission. Atmospheric ions and ground ferromagnetism. Environmental contagion potential. Human response threshold. 0.8 to 1.1 millitesla magnetic flux. Field activation possible near industrial sites. Observed effect: erythrocyte restructuring, hypothermic metabolism, olfactory predation drive, spontaneous Atavus expression. Keller's commentary: we engineered containment around static blood. Pattern X moves like weather. Theoretical framework: Pattern X appears to represent the fusion of ancestral genomic oscillation, pattern R, and the post-borealis synthetic microweave modulation. In essence, a harmonic between ancient instinct and modern signal processing, a resonance that no longer belongs to any single organism. Dr. Marcos proposes the term phylogenetic field, defining it as a distributed ancestry, the collective memory of predation stored in the biosphere itself. Under this model, every organism with heme-based metabolism is a potential receiver. Containment becomes a matter of atmospheric engineering, not biomedical quarantine. Risk assessment: atmospheric propagation. Predictive models suggest pattern X fields may expand through stratospheric ion belts, especially during geomagnetic storms. Current Darby-D instruments unable to map density beyond 10 kilometers altitude. Intelligent direction of pattern X fields by the Mother is suspected but unconfirmed. Psychogenic contagion. Non-carriers within affected zones report shared dreams of being chased and hunted by a predator. Suggests noetic response within both resonant and non-resonant minds. Structural collapse of secrecy. Repeated resonance blooms risk civilian visibility. Recommendation: deploy Aegis Foundation Front as international solar weather monitoring agency to mask field data. Convergent hypotheses. Marcos versus Keller. On the origin of pattern X, Dr. Keller proposes it as the result of data recombination post-borealis. Dr. Marcos posits re-emergence of Atavus microweave resonance field carried by geomagnetism. Dr. Keller suspects transmission by purely electromagnetic propagation, while Dr. Marcos invokes an ontogenic or ancestral memory model. Dr. Keller suggests using a chemical aerosol for atmospheric ion suppression. Dr. Marcos believes that ritualized blood binding at ley line intersections will be effective. Ethical concerns presented by both include the loss of control over human evolution, as well as fulfillment of what Dr. Marcos terms the Atavus return cycle. Their debate remains unresolved. Both agree pattern X represents a threshold event. Conclusion and recommendation. 1. Establish volt-lumen subchamber X for continuous resonance capture and analysis. 2. Deploy field detectors in iron and limestone belts across Eastern Europe and Appalachia. 3. Initiate psychological profiling of activated carriers for Phase 2 integration into house command structures. 4. Begin ethical review, Clause 4, Shadow Concord, regarding definition of humanity post-pattern X. Appended note, handwritten, unsigned, believed Marcos. When the air itself remembers the kill, we have entered the memory of the world. It will dream us forward or devour us trying. End of Memorandum PX Delta 01. Cross-reference Pale Convergence, Volt Lumen, Pattern X Environmental Propagations. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division, Containment Operations Log, Volt Lumen Facility. Document ID VL Theta 27 Delta Log 01. Subject Case 27 Delta Anka P. Cross-reference PX PSY 27 Delta Pattern X Memorandum Shadow Concord Clause 4. Date range June 22nd, 2026 through July 10th, 2026. Compiled by Lieutenant R. Havel, Vault Lumen Security. Clinical Oversight, Dr. E. Varon, Dr. S. Keller, Dr. A. Marcos. Facility overview. Location: Vault Lumen Subchamber X, Level Theta. Depth 132 meters. Containment medium: triply shielded ferromagnetic isolation cell, 7-meter diameter. Atmospheric composition: 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.8% trace argon, ion field at 0.95 millitesla. Monitoring systems: microwave telemetry node array Beta 4, hemodynamic loop sensors, cognitive resonance recorder CRR02. Purpose: observe stability of pattern X expression under sustained isolation. Record noetic interference and environmental resonance feedback. Day-by-day observation highlights. Day 1, June 22nd. Subject placed in chamber theta. Initial resonance baseline 0.07 R bloom. Mild disorientation. No aggression. Requested dark water. Interpreted as need for isolation from light stimuli. Granted low lumen environment. Day 3, June 24th. Noetic field fluctuation synchronized with facility power rhythm, 50 Hz. Hallway lights pulse when subject exhales. Audio transcript log 33. You built your walls out of my breath. Day 6, June 27th. Resonance amplitude peaked at 0.11 R bloom. Instrumentation lagged 3 seconds behind. Physiological vitals nominal. Brainwave pattern entered harmonic with ambient ion field. Dr. Keller ordered suspension of aerosol dampeners. Day 9, June 30th. Staff within 15 meters report intrusive imagery. Subterranean corridors, metallic taste. CRR02 recorded background hum matching 74 kHz carrier of pattern X. Subject remains seated, eyes open, unblinking for 11 hours. Day 12, July 2nd. Atmospheric ionization increased 12%. Frost formation on containment glass despite 18 degrees Celsius ambient. Marcos note: condensation pattern resembles alveolar lattice. Day 15, July 5th. Subject vocalizes multiple overlapping tones. Spectrograph shows harmonic bifurcation. 1 human pitch, 1 subsonic. Minus 18 Hz. Security operator Havel collapses. Transient hypoxia. EEG shows mimic of subject's waveform. Day 19, July 9th. Chamber power fluctuations stabilize around subject's heart rate, not against it. Ion field now maintaining itself without generator input for 4-minute intervals. Keller comment: containment medium has become participatory. Day 20, July 10th. At 0314, total system blackout. Backup visual feed restored 0316. Subject deceased in central restraint chair. No obvious cause of death, but visible mist outline adhering to inner glass. Thermal signature consistent with ambient temperature. Resonance baseline elevated to 0.19 R bloom. Data analysis. Containment integrity. Formally intact, functionally compromised by synchronization feedback. Energy readings. Facility draws 7% less external power when subject awake. Implies field reciprocity. Psychological effect on staff. Increase in empathy, insomnia, and hunger. Dreams contain identical phrase, the breath of stone. Current status. Subject designated resonant entity Theta 27 Delta. Notable phenomena after July 10th include microwave array continuing to register rhythmic modulation at 74 kHz coming from deceased Theta 27 Delta. Vault lumen access sealed. Recommendation by Directorate: leave chamber active and observe from remote station. House Varn requested retrieval. Denied under Clause 4, ethical suspension pending. Final note: recorded voice fragment. Identified source: Marcos. Containment was never a wall. It was an invitation for the blood to dream of freedom. End of containment log VL Theta 27 Delta log 01. Private Journal of Dr. Adrian Marcos, undated. Fragments recovered post-Concord. Entry 1. Aftermath. I remember only fragments of the escape from Site 9. The air was heavy with vaporized coolant and the stink of ruptured containment gel. The alarms were no longer alarms, only a single continuous tone, so low and constant it felt like it lived inside my skull. We were told to evacuate by vector corridor, but the corridors no longer existed. The tunnels buckled inward like paper under heat. Keller vanished somewhere in the chaos. Whether through collapse or extraction, I still cannot say. I made it 12 kilometers north through the permafrost tunnels before Darby D signals ceased entirely. My comm implant burned out. I tore it from my neck with my own hand. The aurora above the glacier pulsed red that night. I know now it was not the sky burning, it was the resonance itself. Entry 2. The silence of 4 months. There is a peculiar quiet to hiding in the aftermath of a secret war no one knows was fought. I took refuge in abandoned meteorological outposts along the fjord, feeding on meltwater, data fragments, and the occasional shortwave broadcast. Every night I heard patterns in static, modulated human breath, I think, or the same synthetic voice repeating, "Pattern R confirmed, pattern R confirmed." Darby D sent no retrieval units. Either they were annihilated, or I was erased from their ledgers. At times I wondered if the progenitor had truly perished beneath the ice. The blood patterns on my hands told me otherwise. They did not fade. Entry 3. Contact. They found me first. Not the agency, but them. A delegation under the banner of House Varn. They moved like predators who had learned to mimic the posture of diplomats. The one who spoke called herself Rain. She knew details of Borealis that were classified above even Keller's clearance. She offered protection, resources, and, though unspoken, a kind of belonging. In return, she asked for what remained of my Mitroweave archives. I refused at first. Then she spoke a name that no human should have known. P0. Entry 4. The Blood Accord. Months passed in negotiation and suspicion. They did not kill me. That alone was remarkable. I was relocated under their protection to an island facility. Not one of their grand citadels, but a neutral ground. There I met others, estranged Darby D remnants, independent geneticists, even a few who had once called themselves hunters. Together we began the first phase of what they termed the Shadow Concord. It was not peace, it was recognition, that extinction serves neither predator nor prey. They called upon me to serve as interpreter between the empirical and the ancestral, to explain to their elders the language of code and coil, and to translate to the remaining scientists the language of hunger and inheritance. Entry 5. Return. When I looked into the mirrored surface of the Concord chamber, obsidian polished to a depthless black, I saw my reflection fracture. In one face, I saw the archaeologist who once lectured on ritual burials. In the other, something born from the ice and the blood it preserved. I am no longer certain which of them writes these words, but I know this. The Shadow Concord is only the beginning. The houses no longer hide entirely in myth, and the remnants of Darby D hunger for relevance. Between them stands a fragile thing, an agreement, a truce written in the language of resonance and survival, and I, Adrian Marcos, once dead, now walk again beneath their shadow. Entry 6. Resonance Medium Trials. The houses insisted I resume research on resonance propagation, but not under the sterile gaze of Darby D oversight. Here, the methodology is intuitive, guided by instinct more than calibration. Their laboratories resemble sanctuaries, dark halls where blood samples and crystal matrices are arrayed side by side, where chants accompany centrifuge hums. I began work on an interface they call the resonant medium, an apparatus designed to visualize Atavus inheritance as patterns of refracted light in a suspended heme solution. In Darby D, this would have been dismissed as metaphysical indulgence. Here, it produced measurable data. The light bends, not randomly, but rhythmically, in response to the pulse of nearby inheritors. Living patterns, coherent resonance. It is as if the blood itself remembers. Entry 7. Reflections on the Divide. Science is a language built to describe order. The houses speak a language built to preserve it through predation. In the space between those two lexicons lies something unspeakably ancient. I find myself drifting between these poles. The scientist in me still catalogs and records, while another part, awakened during Borealis, feels the pulse beneath analysis, as though the act of understanding desecrates the sacred. Keller would call this contamination. Rain calls it awakening. I am uncertain which of them is right. Entry 8. Communion Experiment 3. Subject. Resonant medium interaction with living Atavus tissue. When exposed to the heme lattice solution, the sample began emitting low-frequency vibrations. The waveform was identical to that recorded at Site 9 during P0's containment breach, suggesting the progenitor's resonance was not unique, but archetypal. After 20 minutes, the medium began to solidify into crystalline filaments. When I touched them, I saw faces. Not hallucinations, eidetic projections stored within the resonance field itself, a living archive of inherited memory. The houses whispered that I had opened the ancestral lattice. I have not decided whether to fear or pursue it. Entry 9. The Dissonance. I dreamed of Keller last night. He stood at the edge of a frozen sea, holding a shard of obsidian that pulsed like a heart. He said nothing, but I knew his meaning. You crossed the line we swore never to cross. He is right, of course. But perhaps the line itself was the lie. The progenitor was never about the origin of our kind, but the continuation of an impulse older than humanity, the hunger to endure by consuming the past. Entry 10. The Concord's True Face. Tonight I was invited to witness the sealing of the first Shadow Concord Charter. The houses gathered under low red light, human representatives standing among them. Darby D's remnants wearing expressions of reverent disbelief. A single clause was repeated aloud. The blood that remembers will not be destroyed, nor diluted. It will be guided. I wonder who among us still believes that guidance is possible. The Atavus have survived every extinction event, not by adaptation, but by concealment. Now, with me as their bridge, they are learning disclosure. It feels like heresy. It feels like evolution. Self-experimentation phase. Fragments dated approximately 6 months after the signing of the Shadow Concord Charter. Entry 11. Baseline Analysis. Rain pressed me for weeks to undergo sequencing. She phrased it as due diligence, but her eyes betrayed curiosity, or perhaps fear. When I finally consented, the microweave assay was performed using the Concord's own lattice array. Result: pattern C resonance, weakly expressed, with trace bloom characteristics. By Darby D standards, this would qualify as carrier latent. I stared at the printout for a long time. The weave patterns resembled the aurora arcs I saw above Site 9. Elegant, luminous, and unmistakably alive. I have spent years dissecting this inheritance in others, only to find it whispering in my own blood. The question is not how I acquired it. The question is how long it has been awake. Entry 12. Controlled Exposure. Experiment log. Exposure of my own plasma to resonant medium, 5 milliliter sample. Objective: determine whether sympathetic resonance occurs. Within 90 seconds, the lattice responded, not with standard harmonic oscillation, but with a mirrored waveform, in perfect phase opposition. The medium recognized me, or resisted me. The boundary between those states is thin. My body temperature dropped 2 degrees within an hour, pulse irregular, visual acuity heightened. Rain said nothing when she saw the change, but I saw the flicker in her pupils, the involuntary dilation that Atavus experienced when scenting kin. Entry 13. The Mirror Test. They say the Atavus see differently in the mirror. Light bends, edges smear. It is not absence they perceive, but a multiplicity, the ghost of all the selves encoded in the blood. Tonight I looked into the obsidian panel in my lab. My reflection stuttered, then split. One figure stood motionless, the other breathed. I have confirmed my status as carrier active. The resonance is awake, and it recognizes its origin in me. I am both observer and specimen now, and there is no going back to objectivity. Entry 14. The Awakening. Dreams have become indistinguishable from data streams. I perceive signals even in silence, the pulse of others across the Concord, low and rhythmic, like whale song beneath ice. Their presence is not heard, but felt, threaded through marrow. Keller warned me years ago that obsession creates proximity. He was right. Proximity, however, is not infection. It is inheritance. I am no longer sure if the progenitor created us, or simply remembered us into being. Entry 15. Reflections before disclosure. The Council wishes to make my status known. They believe it will solidify the Concord's trust between houses and human remnants. I suspect they want to see if I will still be regarded as one of them. It no longer matters. I have crossed too far into the lattice to retreat. When I close my eyes, I see the resonance not as pattern or data, but as lineage. Each thread is a life devoured and remembered. Each pulse a promise that the blood will never forget its origin. Perhaps that is what the progenitor truly was, the first memory that refused to die, and now that memory lives in me. Entry 16. The Revelation. The disclosure was not mine to make. They convened the Concord Assembly beneath the basalt vault, representatives of the houses, Darby D's surviving operatives, and the new class of neutral observers they call custodians. Rain stood behind me as they projected the weave results. No preamble, no mitigation, pattern C, active expression. The words hung in the cold air like a verdict. Half the chamber recoiled. The other half stared with something that might have been awe. To them, I am now both blasphemy and proof, a human who crossed the boundary without permission, without lineage. One of the elder Varn whispered, "The lattice has chosen him." Another hissed, "No, he has contaminated it." Entry 17. The Division. The Concord fractured that night. Darby D's remaining command staff demanded containment, my voluntary quarantine. House Varn refused. They argued that my blood was evidence of convergence, not infection. In the shadows of that debate, House Drathey remained silent. Their emissaries watched every motion I made, recording, calculating. I suspect they were already drafting the new protocols, the ones they later called resonance ethics. Keller would have loved the irony, a council of predators writing moral codes for their own biology. Entry 18. Isolation period. They confined me to the lower archives for security and observation. I was not chained, but the walls vibrate faintly with suppression frequencies, a low thrumming meant to dampen resonance activity. I have not eaten in 3 days, and yet I am not hungry. Instead, I feel a constant hum behind my sternum, as though the blood itself is conversing with something beyond the physical. Sometimes I think I can hear the progenitor's pulse echoing through the medium conduits. They believe they can contain resonance. They forget resonance is containment. It remembers the vessel that denies it. Entry 19. The Visitors. 2 came to see me, Rain, and an envoy from House Selene. Selene's emissary was pale even by their standards, eyes like candle flame beneath water. She addressed me by title, Doctor, but her tone was that of one priest to another. She told me that among her house they do not call this infection, but awakening. She believes the progenitor's memory is reassembling itself across the carriers, fragments of a singular consciousness returning to coherence. I asked her if that meant I was becoming something other than myself. She smiled gently. You always were. Entry 20. The Concord reformed. Weeks later, the Shadow Concord reconvened. A new clause was added to the charter, authored jointly by House Varn and the custodians. Those who bear the residence, whether by inheritance or discovery, shall not be hunted nor hidden, but studied and remembered. I am permitted to continue my work, though under observation. Darby-D's remnants have withdrawn, taking their data and their fear with them. The houses remain divided, yes, but now bound by curiosity as much as necessity. I have become their proof of concept that the human and the Atavus were never two species, but one continuity, the predator remembering its prey, the prey remembering its predator. And in the lattice between them, I stand, the echo of both. Unclassified Executive Summary. Incident Response Team, Unit After Action Report, AAR-47. Location, Biel Herculane, Romania. Date, 5 months after P0 breach. Classification, R-Tier event, internal eyes only, do not disseminate. Pre-event context. Response Team IRT-4, call sign Frostline, deployed following multiple reports from local gendarmerie of synchronized civilian collapses, sensory distress, and unexplained hypothermic signatures observed in warm weather conditions. Initial assessment was mass poisoning or chemical exposure. However, satellite thermal analytics detected multiple anomalously cold human signatures moving unpredictably prior to the event. Darby-D remnants later confirmed these were early-stage inheritors undergoing acute resonance activation. Audio log excerpts, body cam feed. 1604-11, Lieutenant Dumitru. Central, we're entering the lower district now. Civilians are disoriented but responsive. Some are... Hold on. Why is it so quiet? The whole street just stopped. 1604-37, Sergeant Olaru. Temperatures dropping 5 degrees. Thermals glitching. Getting artifacting. White spikes. Never seen that from urban heat islands. 1605-09, Lieutenant Dumitru. Team, helmet sealed. Something's radiating. 1606-12, Private First Class Levente. Sir, that woman, her pupils. Christ, that's not drug dilation. Camera shows a middle-aged woman standing unsteadily, pupils fully dilated, sclera bloodshot, breath visible despite high humidity, skin pallid. 1606-28, unknown civilian. Do you hear it? Audio captures a warbling distortion not perceived by operators, indicating inheritor-specific auditory intrusion. Event onset, 1607-55. 3 civilians collapse simultaneously, clutching their temples. Vitals crash, then spike. No toxins detected. 1608-30. EM distortion wave hits the district. Optical systems flash white. Thermal imagers fail. 1608-58. Activation behavior observed in civilian female, later designated Subject V1. Exhibits trembling, hypothermia, vein prominence, and disorientation. Appears to orient herself toward an unseen distant vector. V1 unprompted. It's calling. First hostile contact. Subject V3. 1610-41. Civilian male, Christian Moraru, Rises with abnormal coordination and speed. Displays core temperature of 31.4 degrees Celsius. Brief canine elongation. Rapid tissue recovery on hands. Retinal reflection inconsistent with humans. 161102, Private First Class Levente. Sir, did you see that? That wasn't reflection. 161107, Lieutenant Dimitru. Tasers, non-lethal, now! Upon taser impact, V3 whispers, she's awake. Resonance peak, the hum. 161215, infrasonic oscillation detected at 19 to 22 Hz. Civilians begin to exhibit any combination of the following symptoms: screaming at unheard stimuli, entering predatory fixation behaviors, sprinting at inhuman speeds, vomiting blood, laughing uncontrollably. Operators exhibit mild nausea but do not perceive the oscillation directly. Extraction and containment failure. 1614-52. 3 unidentified operatives with abnormal cold signatures enter area. One retrieves V3 with extreme speed, vanishing into an alley before operators can pursue. Footage analysis indicates these individuals were House Varn retrieval agents, though this was unknown to government forces. Event subsides. 16-16-30. Temperature normalizes. Civilians regain lucidity with no memory of the incident or the hum. Area secured under contamination protocol. Public statement refers to a chemical spill. Files locked under R-tier classification. Internal analysis. Key findings. 1. Activation is instantaneous and externally triggered. 2. Affected individuals display non-human metabolic profiles. 3. EM interference appears directional and follows a moving source. 4. Unknown actors arrive rapidly, outpacing government response. 5. Civilians exhibit predatory micro-behaviors during resonance. 6. Subject V3's statement, she's awake, suggests shared cognitive intrusion. Government conclusion. Possible neuroweapon or covert experimental assault. Darby D. Remnant conclusion. P0 passed near the district. Resonance triggered inheritor activation. House's conclusion. The pale convergence has begun. End of report. House Varn, Internal Field Dossier. Recon Unit Shade Trace. Operation Reclaimant Vector. Location Biel Herculane, Romania. Corresponds to Government AAR 47. Classification for elders and progeny of the first vein only. Prelude. House Varn detected resonance precursors 14 minutes prior to the first government unit's arrival. Pattern analysis confirmed. P0 vector proximity estimated at under 110 kilometers. Multiple dormant inheritor signatures beginning to flicker. B-loop distortions in the local thermal field. All indicators suggested spontaneous partial awakening among local carriers. Shade trace deployment objectives. 1. Locate newly activated inheritors. 2. Extract targets prior to government capture. 3. Prevent intrafamily predation during uncontrolled awakening. House consensus. P0 is active. Wherever she moves, the blood stirs. Deployment report. Operative 6. Timestamp 16:03:12. Thermal anomalies detected south of the lower district. Government vehicles en route. Operative 6. Government response is fast today. Someone has been whispering in their ear. House analysts conclude an active Darby D. Remnant cell is advising local authorities. First signs of activation. Timestamp 16:06:09. Operatives observe first inheritor, female, approximately 40, entering sensory dissonance consistent with early resonance response. Operative 3. Her gaze is searching for the vector. She's feeling the progenitor. Operative 1. Not feeling. Recognizing. Recognition implies ancestral neural reactivation, a concept central to Varn doctrine. The hum, low-frequency cognitive pull. Timestamp 1612-15. An infrasonic oscillation saturates the district. Civilians and government operators do not consciously detect it. Inheritors and house operatives do. Operative 2. The song begins. She is not far. Operative 6. Not a song, a summons. House terminology for resonance, blood verge. Subject V3 identified. Timestamp 1610-41. Male civilian Christian Moraru displays rapid onset activation. Canine displacement, microlysis of oral tissue, thermal inversion, limbic overdrive, predatory fixation toward nearest carotid source. Operative 6. If government takes him, they will carve him until nothing remains. We reclaim. Retrieval maneuver. Timestamp 1614-52. Government body cams record blurred figures. House Varn identifies this as a standard 3-point veil step maneuver. Operative 6 initiates kinetic misdirection. Operative 2 induces EM flutter to suppress cameras. Operative 1 secures Subject V3 and relocates via rapid vector shift. Operative 1. Subject compliant after taser strike. Heart irregular but stabilizing. Whispered acknowledgement of her waking. He is aware. Government interference. Government response interpreted as chemical spill, coordinated psychosis, possible neuroweapon. Operative 6. They think this is done to them, not born from them. House doctrine forbids unnecessary engagement. Extraction proceeds without incident. Post-extraction assessment of Subject V3. Subject displays incomplete transformation, proximity-only resonance. No direct contact with P0. Partial ancestral recall. She's awake. Heightened olfactory mapping. Enhanced limbic response. Suppressed human metabolic pathways. Subject demonstrates directional awareness of P0's movement, indicating the progenitor has crossed a critical distance threshold. Analysis. House versus government conclusions. Government conclusion: neuroweapon, psychological contagion, or experimental assault. Darby D. remnants: P0 no longer dormant, resonance events increasing. House Varn: bloodline awakening, consistent with progenitor influence. House Varn elder statement: this is the natural order reasserting itself. The silence of the blood is ending. Final note from Shade Trace Commander. They believe they witnessed a hostile act. They misunderstand. They did not see an attack. They saw a birth. End of dossier. House Varn Internal Biological Hold Report. Subject V3, Christian Moraru. Location: Varn Secure Hold, Subterranean Chamber Theta 4. Status: Early resonance activation, progenitor proximity phase. Transfer and initial restraint. Subject V3 regained consciousness in a dim, stone-lined chamber under low-frequency red illumination. House Varn uses such environments to suppress adrenal spikes and reduce sensory overload during early awakening phases. Restraints consisted of interlocking composite bone and carbon limb clamps, warm to the touch and keyed to inheritor physiology. Operative 1 noted: do not let him see cold steel. Steel reminds the blood of old fears. Subject condition upon recovery. Core temperature, 31.1 degrees Celsius. Pulse, highly variable, 36 to 210 beats per minute, spikes during olfactory stimuli. Pupil response, fixed dilation. Dentition, canines elongated 2.4 millimeters beyond human baseline. Skin, pale with faint subdermal luminescence. Speech, fragmented, intermittent whispering. When asked his name, subject answered, I knew it in the day, but the night knows me differently. House Varn initial assessment. Physician Scholar 12 reports, resonance has not fully taken him. His mind is caught between ancestral impulse and human identity. If pushed, he will break. If guided, he will transform. Subject displays proximity expression syndrome due to P0's regional presence, including enhanced olfactory recognition, directional sensory pull, intermittent dissociation, rapid microhealing, aversion to light, fascination with darkness and motion. First resonance spike, timestamp 0214. Subject undergoes a resonance spike correlated with P0's movement approximately 70 kilometers away. Observed, muscular tightening, jaw clenching to the point of dental fracture, arrested breathing, ocular fixation on unseen vector. Subject whispered, she stepped. Operative 6 reported corresponding microresonance in his own nerves. Interaction with Operative 1. Operative 1 initiated direct contact. Do you understand what's happening to you? V3 responds, something inside me woke up before I did. Operative 1, that is not something to fear. V3, then why does it hunger? Operative 1 touched the subject's forehead, traditional Varn claim gesture. Subject immediately calmed, pulse stabilizing for the first time. Metabolic feeding trial. Subject given 200 milliliters warmed oxygenated bovine heme slurry. Response, immediate pupil contraction, controlled swallowing, tremors, visible relief, reduced limbic agitation. House assessment, his blood remembers, his body has not yet learned. Ancestral recall incident, timestamp 0433. Subject began muttering in archaic phrases identified as Proto-Varn ritual fragments. Night fangs, cold earth, the first mother walks, she calls the marrow awake. This suggests unusually strong progenitor influence at an early stage. Subject requests release. Subject V3, let me follow her. Operative 1, not yet. V3, you don't understand. I can feel where she steps. Physician Scholar 12's assessment. The subject may become a locator, a living compass for P0's movement. House Elder Directive. Elder Varn. Do not release him. Guide him. He may lead us to her. Subject V3 is to be trained, not contained. Final note from Operative 1. He is not turning into something else. He is turning into what he always was. The world around him has forgotten. His blood has not. End of report. House Varn Training Log. Expression Phase 2. Subject V3, Christian Moraru. Location, Chamber 9, the Kinetic Hall. Phase, Shadow Pursuit and Reflex Conditioning. The Kinetic Hall. The Kinetic Hall is designed to teach movement, reflex, and predatory focus. The corridor is long, cold, ribbed with uneven stone and strategic alcoves. Temperature, 2 degrees Celsius. Lighting, pulsing infrared. Operative 1 escorts V3 to the threshold. Operative 1. Stillness gives you awareness. Movement gives you survival. Before you hunt, you must learn what you are. Trial 1. Reflex Cascade. A weighted pendulum swings toward V3's throat with no warning. V3 responds instinctively, knees bending, spine arching, jaw opening in a defensive snarl. The pendulum misses by less than 2 centimeters. Reflex latency improves by 42% since day 1. Trial 2. Shadow Pursuit. A masked Varn operative moves through the hall in erratic, near-silent patterns. V3 is instructed. Operative 1. Do not follow his body. Follow what you do not see. V3 moves quickly, still too loud, but fast and instinctive. He senses air displacement, humidity shifts, and pressure changes. He loses and regains the trail multiple times. Operative 1. Shadow Pursuit neural pathways active. Pattern consistent with ancestral chase behavior. Trial 3. Controlled predatory focus. A second operative exposes a vial of warmed heme slurry. The scent triggers a near-feral reaction. Pulse spike from 41 beats per minute to 167 beats per minute. Jaw dislocates slightly. Nails harden. Stance lowers. Operative 1. Do not move. You are scent. You are hunger. But you are not ruled by either. V3 shudders but stops himself. Breath shakes. Frost forming. He resists the predatory impulse. Operative 1. Good. Most fail here. Most become beasts. V3. I could have taken him. Operative 1. You don't need to tell me. I saw it. Trial 4. Veil Step Introduction. V3 attempts a burst acceleration maneuver resembling early veil stepping. He fails, cracking stone underfoot. Observations. Muscular torque above baseline. Misfiring proprioception. Hypothermic limb aura. Energy dispersal rather than channeling. Operative 1. Early veil trace behavior. Encouraging. The breakthrough. A hidden operative approaches from behind. V3 does not turn or look. He simply raises his hand and catches the operative's wrist mid-stride, flawlessly. V3. I knew you were there. House Varn Assessment. Physician Scholar 12. Muscle adaptation surpassing genomic expectations. Operative 1. Shadow Pursuit emerging earlier than projected. Elder Varn. He will walk the night. Train him for the field. Final note from Operative 1. He learns quickly, faster than safe. His instincts sharpen with each lesson, but his discipline grows only in moments of pain. We must push him harder before the progenitor's next pulse arrives. End of training log. House Varn Training Log, Expression Phase 3. Subject V3, Christian Moraru. Location, Chamber 10, the Quiet Vein. Focus, Instinct Suppression and Cold Body Stealth. The Quiet Vein. The Quiet Vein is a circular basalt chamber designed to train disappearance rather than movement. Temperature, 1 degree Celsius. Airflow is randomized. No visible light. Detection occurs only through pressure-sensitive infrared that registers presence as halos on the floor. This chamber tests an inheritor's ability to suppress heat, instinct, and presence itself. Trial 1. Cold Body Resonance Stabilization. Objective. Lower core temperature without losing consciousness. V3 sits barefoot on basalt. Breath curls in cold air. Operative 1. Slow your pulse. Let the blood quiet itself. Heat is human. Cold is ours. Core temperature progression. 31.2 degrees Celsius to 30.4 degrees Celsius to 29.8 degrees Celsius to 29.3 degrees Celsius. Most inheritors black out at this stage. V3 remains conscious. V3. The cold. Feels like memory. Trial 2. Instinct suppression. A metal sphere containing fresh animal heart tissue is rolled toward V3. The scent provokes a predatory reflex. Pulse spike, jaw shift, fingers curling. Operative 1. If you move, you fail. If you desire, you fail. If you want, you fail. V3 trembles violently, but does not move. Breath forced out in a long shudder. Pulse drops. Operative 1's note. Instinct suppression, acceptable. Trial 3. Cold Body Stealth. Shadow Skin. Objective. Mask thermal signature, heart rate, and breath to become undetectable. Operative 6 activates the detection grid. Infrared halos appear with each step. Operative 6. Erase yourself. V3 slows his breath, heart rate dips. Infrared halo fades, then vanishes entirely. For 13 seconds, V3 leaves no thermal trace. Upon reappearance, sweat has frozen on his skin. Blood trickles from one nostril. Operative 1. You almost crossed the veil. V3. I felt nothing. Operative 1. Good. Remember that feeling. The failure. Final task. Cross the hall without triggering sensors. V3 takes a step, then falters. Instinct overwhelms him. Pupils widen, jaw clicks, breath becomes shallow. He drops to all fours, slipping toward feral posture. Operative 1 intervenes with a neck hold. Operative 1. Look at me. V3. I can't feel where my mind ends. Operative 1. Then feel where your blood begins. Episode ends after severe tremors. V3 is left exhausted. House Varn assessment. Physician Scholar 12. Shadow skin in Phase 2 is unprecedented. Neural strain severe. Operative 6. He draws from instincts older than understanding. Elder Varn. Continue. Even if he breaks, what emerges will be useful. V3 leaves on unsteady feet, eyes dilated as if sensing something distant. Final note from Operative 1. Instinct bows to him only when forced. The beast waits for weakness. We have made him stronger, but also more fragile. Without control, this strength will tear him apart. End of training log. Shadow Concord Internal Briefing Dossier, prepared by Dr. Silas Keller. Classification: Black Vault, Luminal Access Only. Subject: Analysis of House Drathe's Silent Seat Summaries. This briefing concerns the 23 closing summaries delivered by House Drathe since the formation of the Shadow Concord. Each summary is brief, metaphorical, and given without explanation. Despite this, the accuracy of their predictions is consistently above 80%. After reviewing all available material, I am forced to conclude that House Drathe does not believe they are predicting events. They believe they are remembering them. This document outlines the most critical Drathe summaries, their correlations with known events, and the implications for the ongoing resonance crisis. Drathe Summary Number 4. Your operatives have not failed. The cycle has shifted its center. This was delivered shortly after House Varn reported failure to extract 2 resonance survivors from Romania. At the time, no one understood what Drathe meant by cycle. Days later, our long-range detectors recorded the first mother tongue frequency pulse. Drathe somehow sensed resonance variations before any of our scientific instruments recorded them. Drathe Summary Number 7. Containment is already breached. You simply have not found the hole. At the time, P0 had slipped satellite tracking and was presumed to be avoiding detection. 2 weeks after this summary, spontaneous carrier activations erupted across multiple cities. Drathe's warning implied a non-physical containment breach, one operating across resonance fields rather than geography. Our later analysis confirmed that low-amplitude resonance can destabilize latent carriers without direct contact. Drathe Summary Number 11. He is not your asset anymore. This was spoken in response to Varn's report on Subject V3, Christian Moraru. At the time, Moraru showed no outward signs of expression, though internal instability was noted. 5 days later, he manifested shadow skin for the first time and developed proximity-based resonance sensitivity to P0. Drathe had no access to Varn's internal training timeline. Their awareness of Moraru's impending breakthrough should not have been possible. Drathe Summary Number 15. The mother does not flee, she prepares. For months, the Concord believed P0 was fleeing, erratically moving to avoid detection. Drathe contradicted this outright. Subsequent microwave comparisons revealed rising pattern complexity, consistent with an organism preparing for a major biological or behavioral phase shift. P0 was not running. She was completing a step in a larger cycle. Drathe Summary Number 19. Your maps are wrong. The shadow is not cast, it grows. This was delivered during an attempt to chart resonance stability zones and predict safe regions. Within 10 days, resonance spread to 6 new territories without any verified P0 movement. Dream resonance incidents began around the same time. House Selene reported widespread disturbances in their operatives. Drathe's warning implied that resonance is not a byproduct of P0's location. It is a growth phenomenon, expanding independently of her physical presence. Patterns across all summaries show a consistent cluster of conceptual terms: cycle, threshold, shadow, preparation, shifting centers, and growth versus cast. These terms map directly onto telemetry changes recorded weeks after each meeting. Drathe's language correlates too strongly, too consistently, to be coincidence. The strategic implication is clear. Drathe has an information advantage that no house or human institution currently matches. Whether this comes from ancestral biological pathways, proprietary resonance sensing methods, or something else entirely remains unknown. Based on all available data, I submit the following recommendations. First, we must gain access to Drathe's deep archives. Their predictive accuracy borders on preternatural. Second, the quiet marker operative must be tracked at all times. Their presence at multiple activation sites is statistically impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Third, Darby D should establish a joint committee with House Selene to compare dream convergence incidents with mother tongue frequency pulses. Fourth, we must assume P0's behavior is intentional, not instinctual. Fifth, the Concord must decipher the meaning of the cycle threshold before it arrives. House Drathe's last unscheduled transmission concluded with a message that should concern every member of the Shadow Concord. When the threshold is crossed, the Concord becomes memory. End of briefing. No one expected House Drathe and House Selene to work together. For centuries, they stood at opposite ends of Atavus philosophy. Drathe with their stone archives, cold analysis, and obsession with ancient patterns. Selene with their dreaming oracles, psychic attunement, and their unnervingly intimate understanding of the subconscious realms. They viewed one another with distrust, disdain, contempt even. But P0 changed everything. After the escape of the progenitor, after the first resonance shock waves rippled across Europe and then the world, both houses began to feel the same strange pressure. It wasn't physical. It wasn't psychic. It was something deeper, something old, something the Concord would eventually call the mother tongue frequency. And then came the other phenomenon, the dreams. Selene operatives began collapsing into shared nightmares that were not nightmares at all, but windows into something moving beneath consciousness itself, the dream convergence. These two events, biological resonance and shared dream intrusion, should have belonged to two different worlds, but they didn't. They were two halves of the same voice, and Drathe was the first to acknowledge it. During a Shadow Concord session, Varn and Varkas bickered about border failures and containment strategies. Darby D talked about satellite gaps and signal loss. It was then, at the very end of the meeting, that Drathe's silent seat spoke a sentence that froze the entire room. What does she say in the dreams? The Selene delegation stared at Drathe in disbelief. No one else in the Concord even knew dreams were involved. Something inside Drathe already knew, or remembered. That was the moment the alliance began. The Selene Dreamworkers came forward first. They described the convergence, shared imagery, paralysis, a presence in the dark, a voice, soft but immense, older than language itself. Drathe listened without blinking. They didn't accuse Selene of mysticism. They didn't scoff at visions or dream stuff. Instead, they asked about phonetic structure. And something extraordinary happened. The sketches, the sounds, the half-remembered syllables from the dreams, they matched Drathey's pre-linguistic inscriptions, patterns carved into bloodstone tablets thousands of years old. Celine's nightmares were speaking in a language Drathey had been trying to decode for centuries. The two houses built a joint hypothesis. The mother tongue frequency was the carrier signal, biological, measurable, physical. The dream convergence was the message encoded within it. No wonder neither house could make sense of their half alone. To test the theory, Drathey took an unprecedented step. They invited Celine into one of their most sacred sites. Deep beneath an abandoned monastery, beneath layers of stone, bone, and ritual geometry, sat the bilateral chamber, a room designed by early Atavus ancestors to enhance pattern perception. The Celine dreamworkers entered the chamber and lay down inside its mineral rings. Drathey tuned low-amplitude resonance through concealed channels. For 3 hours, the chamber was silent. Then the Celine dreamworkers began whispering in unison. Not in Romanian, or Greek, or Arabic, or any modern language, but in something older, wet, heavy, a tongue shaped before humanity existed. Drathey recognized the structure immediately. It matched the deepest levels of their mother tongue tablets. The dreamworkers repeated a phrase, a fragment translated only roughly. She gathers the lost pieces. It was the first direct message attributed to P0. The next discovery came by accident. After waking from the chamber's dream trance, a Celine operative began sketching. Her hand moved before her thoughts did, drawing symbols she had never seen before. Drathey recoiled. The glyphs were identical to carvings found on the earliest Atavus burial stones, symbols believed to mark activation sites for pre-classical carriers. Celine had never studied Drathey's archives. She had no way of knowing any of this. Drathey called the phenomenon the mnemonic bloom, ancestral memory bleeding into waking consciousness through the dream convergence channel. It meant P0 wasn't merely stirring carriers. She was transmitting memory. Not metaphor, not hallucination, memory. Together, Drathey and Celine began assembling a larger picture, one far more ominous than anything the Concord imagined. The frequency was rising. The dreams were synchronizing. The mnemonic bloom was spreading. P0's influence no longer required proximity. When the two houses compared their data, they reached the same conclusion. The world was approaching a cycle threshold. Drathey described it mathematically, a topological shift in the global carrier network. Celine described it emotionally, the night of returning memory. Both descriptions pointed to the same outcome. A moment where Atavus expression would stop being an individual event and become environmental. A moment where the boundary between Atavus and human would begin to dissolve. A moment where P0's message would no longer be transmitted, but fully understood. The other houses would eventually learn of this cooperation, and when they did, they were terrified. Varn feared Drathey and Celine together could predict the next resonance event before it happened. Varkas feared this alliance undermined the doctrine of blood sovereignty. Darby D feared something worse, that Drathey and Celine might already understand P0, and that the Concord was months, maybe weeks, behind. But for now, the alliance remains quiet, secret, growing, because Drathey and Celine know something the others don't. P0 is not wandering, she is not fleeing, she is preparing, and the frequency and the dream are converging. The breakthrough came just after midnight. Storms were rolling over the Carpathians, low thunder pulsing like a heartbeat against the stone bulwarks of the Drathey enclave. Deep below, far beneath the abandoned fortress, beneath the ritual tunnels, beneath the archives carved long before the houses took their names, the bilateral chamber awaited. A single Celine dreamworker lay in its center, her breath shallow, her fingers twitching like spider legs as the resonance coils hummed to life. 3 Drathi archivists watched from the perimeter, their faces lit only by the amber pulse of bloodstone lanterns. Tonight would be different. They all felt it. For weeks, mother tongue pulses had been rising in complexity. The dream convergence had grown more synchronized, dreams overlapping across vast distances. And after the last Concord session, both houses had agreed, quietly, secretly, that the next chamber cycle might contain enough density for a complete message. If P0 was preparing something, this would be the night she spoke. The coils activated, the frequency thrummed. The dream worker inhaled sharply, then fell perfectly still. Minutes passed. Then the convergence began. Her body tensed. Her eyes fluttered beneath the lids. Symbols began to bloom across her thoughts. Images Drathi could only partially interpret. Glyphs, bone patterns, archaic markers of lineage and hunger and memory. The frequency surged. Her lips parted, and a voice that was not her own filled the chamber. It was not a scream, nor a whisper. It was not language, nor music. It was something older, something carved into the marrow of the Atavus genome itself. A single, sustained sequence of pre-linguistic phonemes spilled from her throat, resonant and impossibly structured. The same structure Drathi had spent 2 centuries cataloging, but never fully decoding. The archivists scrambled, overlaying the sound with their matrices. Every glyph, every fossil, every primary inscription. The entire history of their house strained to meet this single utterance. Finally, the patterns aligned. A full message, a complete unit of the mother tongue. The dreamworker's voice collapsed into silence. The coils powered down. The room went still, as though afraid to breathe. The Drathi archivists stared at one another, pale and shaking. They played the recording back, slow, careful, 1 syllable at a time. The translation, imperfect but undeniable, emerged from the convergence of Celine's intuition and Drathi's ancestral mathematics. The first complete mother tongue message from P0. I am gathering the scattered blood. The lost shall hear. The broken shall open. All lines will return to the origin. The archivists went silent. The Celine dreamworker slowly woke. Tears streamed down her face. She was calling to me, she whispered. Not just to me, to all of us. It's not a threat. Drathi's lead archivist shook his head. It doesn't matter if it's a threat, he said quietly. It's a promise. Outside, thunder rolled again, closer this time. The progenitor hadn't just spoken. She had announced what came next. The cycle threshold was no longer theory. It was coming. And now the houses knew the truth. P0 wasn't reawakening. She was summoning. Private Diary of Raina Sorrel. House Celine, Dream Grade Operative 3. Not for transmission. Not for Concord review. Entry marked September 14th, 2026, 3:27 CET. I woke 3 hours ago, but I still feel her inside my head. The archivists left me alone after the translation. They're afraid of me now. They try to hide it behind their stone faces and ritual precision, but I can taste their fear in the air. The Drathi always smell like dust and old bones, but tonight they smelled like something else, like prey. I don't know how to write what happened in the chamber. I don't think language was meant for it. I don't think I was meant for it. But if I don't put something down, I'm afraid the memory won't stay contained. It might spread, the way the mnemonic bloom has already begun spreading through my dreams. So I'll try. When the frequency rose, I didn't fall asleep. I fell backward. Not into darkness, not into a dream, but into something older. Older than dreaming, older than thought. There was a corridor of bone, walls made of memory instead of matter, shapes crawling underneath the surface like insects waiting to hatch. Every corridor led inward, always inward, and in the center, she waited. I didn't see her, not directly, but the presence was unmistakable. Massive, cold, a gravitational pull made of blood and inheritance. I wasn't afraid at first. That came later. The first emotion I felt was recognition, like remembering a mother's face you've never seen. It didn't sound like anything. It wasn't a vibration in the air or a whisper in my mind. It was a pressure, a shifting in the architecture of who I am. And then it became syllables, harsh, wet, prehistoric syllables, shaped from the first instincts of our species, the mother tongue. I could still hear it under my skin, like a second heartbeat. She said, "I am gathering the scattered blood." And I felt it, threads pulling taut, something waking in the marrow of every latent carrier. The lost shall hear. My scalp went cold. Somewhere, far away, people I have never met must have turned in their sleep at the same moment. The broken shall open. This line made my stomach twist. I still don't know what she meant. Not fully. All lines will return to the origin. The chamber cracked when this word hit the air. Origin. The lanterns flickered. The dream folded. And I gasped awake. When they helped me sit up, I realized I was crying. Not from fear, not from pain, from recognition. It felt like part of me had been missing my entire life, and she had just called it home. And now I can't stop feeling that pull. In the corner of my vision, I keep seeing flickers, shapes with elongated jaws, pale eyes, shadows with teeth, early Atavus forms, maybe, or the memory of them. I don't know. But I know this. The message wasn't meant for Drathie. It wasn't meant for the Concord. It wasn't meant to be analyzed or dissected. It was meant to be heard. By us. By the blood. By every carrier tethered to her through time. By me. I should feel terrified. I should feel violated. But I don't. I feel chosen. Aligned. Pulled toward something I don't have words for. And that's what terrifies me. I can feel her watching even now, somewhere behind my eyes. A warmth, a gravity, an inevitability. I think the others will feel it soon. I think the threshold isn't coming. I think it's already here. And I think we crossed it last night without realizing. I should sleep, but she's in my dreams, and I'm afraid if I go back, I won't wake. Not as myself. Not entirely. R.S. Raina didn't go back to the bilateral chamber at all that week. House Celine wanted to rest her. House Drathie wanted to study her. Darby D wanted to monitor her neurophysiology. But none of them understood the real situation. The mother tongue message had not ended when Raina left the chamber. It had only begun. For 3 days she endured flashes, static in her vision, peripheral figures that vanished when she turned, the metallic taste of ancient blood every time she swallowed. Mnemonic bloom symbols appeared on notes she didn't remember writing, on the walls of her room, on the insides of her eyelids. But the dreams remained quiet, too quiet. Celine watchers recorded that silence as progress. Drathie archivists recorded it as pattern recession. Darby D wrote it off as exhaustion. Raina knew better. This was the silence before breath, before speech, before the next message, and it came on the fourth night. She was awake when it began, fully awake, reading over a Celine resonance log by lantern light. The room stilled. No sound, no hum from the lights, no wind against the window. Then the darkness behind her eyelids brightened, a reverse of normal vision, as though the dream were surfacing underneath reality. She fell backward again, but this time there was no corridor, no bone, no ancient architecture. She dropped into a void of warm red light, pulsing like breath. She felt weightless, suspended in a place without horizon or ground. Her voice didn't work. Her breath didn't move. And then she felt the presence, closer, clearer, more defined than before. The mother, not a silhouette, not an impression, a shape. Tall, inhuman, bones arranged in a logic older than anatomy, skin like waxed stone, teeth like polished obsidian, eyes, no whites, no pupils, just two dark orbs. Raina tried to look away. Her neck wouldn't obey. The figure spoke without opening its mouth. The second message did not strike like the first. It entered her, slipping between thought and instinct, coiling around her identity until she could not tell where she ended and it began. Words formed, a full sequence, not merely a sentence, a command. In the mother tongue, "You will wake the ones who sleep. You will open the sealed blood. The hollow lines belong to me." Raina convulsed. Her vision snapped, the void twisting like torn fabric. The figure leaned closer, so close her skin burned from the proximity. More words. "Speak what I give you. Carry what I return. Call the scattered home." The mother lifted a hand, its fingers too long, its knuckles bending wrong, and pressed it to Raina's chest. Her heart stopped, just for a moment, long enough for her to feel the echo. Not her heartbeat, P0's. Then the dream shattered. Raina woke on the stone floor beside her bed. Her nails had carved mnemonic bloom glyphs into her arms. Her pulse was irregular, beating in a stuttering double rhythm. Her vision was tinted red around the edges. And worst of all, she was speaking when she woke, not in her own voice, not in any human voice, in the mother tongue. A continuous stream, mourning and triumphant and hungry all at once. Celine watchers burst into the room. Drathi archivists followed seconds later. Darby D. medics arrived behind them. None could get her attention. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her breath synced with something none of them could hear. One of the watchers whispered, horrified, "She's broadcasting." And they were right. This wasn't a dream message. It wasn't even an internal effect. Raina was transmitting a live mother tongue pulse from her waking body, without chamber amplification, without resonance equipment. A human Atavus hybrid mind echoing P0's voice into the world. The second contact event had begun, and the threshold was no longer abstract. The mother had chosen a herald, and she had started using her. They isolated Raina Sorrel in one of House Drathi's sub-vaults, a chamber older than the houses themselves. No windows, no lanterns, just mineral walls pulsing faintly with inherited resonance, a place meant for quiet observation of dormant horrors. She was sedated, bound, monitored by the best Celine watchers, the sternest Drathi archivists, and 2 Darby D neurospecialists working around the clock. None of them understood what was happening to her. None of them had the language. She had become loud, too loud. Her pulse had split into a dual rhythm, syncing intermittently with resonance fluctuations recorded across 3 continents. Her dreams bled through her waking consciousness. Her whispers were mother tongue fragments operating at frequencies that triggered nausea in anyone within 20 feet. She wasn't stable. She wasn't safe. But she wasn't deteriorating. She was changing. And on the sixth night of isolation, the change reached its third stage, the third contact event. It began with quiet. Not sleep, not sedation, not exhaustion. Silence. Absolute and crushing, like the air itself had forgotten to vibrate. Every monitor flatlined simultaneously, not in death, but in unity. Reyna opened her eyes. The glow returned, soft, lambent, but unmistakably wrong, a color no human eye had evolved to perceive. A Selene watcher stepped forward, whispering her name, and immediately collapsed, hands pressed to her ears. The sound that had stunned her was too low for microphones to register, but it hit the room like pressure in the bones. Drathi archivists recognized it instantly. It was not a human sound, not even an Atavus sound. It was proto-resonance, the precursor substrate of the mother tongue. Reyna sat upright, restraints snapping as though made of twine. She did not blink, she did not speak. She simply stared at the far wall, her pupils widening until they swallowed the glow. The air changed, and then she shifted. Every witness described it differently afterward. Darby said her outline blurred as though refracted through heat. Selene operatives insisted she was in two places at once. Drathi archivists, who had seen deeper horrors, simply described it as a doubling. One Reyna remained on the bed, but another, a silhouette of her made of dim red light, stepped forward. Not a ghost, not a hallucination. A resonance projection. A dream body imposed into the waking world. How Selene had theorized such a thing. Drathi had denied its possibility. P0 made it real. The projection turned toward the watchers, and it spoke. Not through Reyna's mouth, but through the room itself. The walls vibrated. The stone carried the sound. Every bone and every witness hummed with the message. The third mother tongue sequence. A complete, structured, intentional message. The cracks are open. The sealed blood stirs. My memory returns to its vessels. Reyna's physical body convulsed, but her projection continued speaking. You will bear the new lines. You will carry the first signal. The forgotten children come home. The projection stepped closer, her eyes levels of brightness beyond the first two contacts. And then P0 spoke the phrase that terrified even Drathi. The threshold is no longer ahead. It is behind you. The projection collapsed into her body like a shadow returning at the end of day. Reyna screamed, not in fear, not in pain, but in some unknowable emotion that shook the stone vault and made every observer's nose bleed. Her voice split again, two tones layered over each other. Inhuman resonance imposed over human anatomy. She drew breath, shaking, trembling, eyes burning with pale light, and she whispered, in her own voice this time. She showed me the next step. Drathi froze. Selene went silent. Darby D leaned in, terrified and fascinated. Reyna turned her head slowly, as though listening to something only she could hear. She's not calling anymore, she whispered. She's arranging us. Then her pulse shifted again. A new rhythm, one that didn't match any recorded Atavus pattern. A third heartbeat signature. The room backed away from her. She smiled. Not with joy, not with malice, with recognition. She's almost here. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division, Darby D, Joint Oversight, Shadow Concord. Clearance, Obsidian. Document status, retroactive analysis. Date, 19th of June, 2026. Origin, Genomic Anomalies Review Committee. Title, Addendum 7C, Post-Borealis Genomic Anomaly Review, Quiet Marker. Reference events, Project Borealis, Containment Breach, P0 Escape and Subsequent Resonance Emergence, Pre-Resonant Anomalous Incident Archive, 2019 to 2025. Executive Summary. This addendum documents the identification of a previously unrecognized atavistic carrier phenotype revealed through post-Borealis retrospective analysis. The phenotype was not detected prior to Project Borealis. It could not have been. Its existence was inferred only after the emergence of resonance following the escape of P0, when earlier anomalous incidents, previously dismissed or misclassified, became contextually legible. The phenotype has been provisionally designated Quiet Marker, QMKR. Background. Prior to the Project Borealis containment breach, DARBD screening protocols operated under the assumption that atavistic activation was gradual, latent carriers exhibited detectable prodromal indicators, absence of resonance equated to absence of risk. These assumptions were invalidated following Borealis. Post-escape resonance modeling demonstrated that atavistic expression can exist in a fully suppressed state, undetectable by pre-Borealis methodologies. This realization prompted a full re-examination of the Pre-Resonant Anomalous Incident Archive, 2019 to 2025. Pre-Resonant Incident Reclassification. Between 2019 and early 2025, DARBD logged multiple isolated anomalies involving individuals cleared as non-carriers or benign latent carriers. At the time, these incidents were classified as psychological decompensation, environmental stress reactions, instrumentation error, statistical outliers. They were not designated resonance events. They could not have been. Following Borealis, 9 of these incidents were re-examined due to structural similarities observed in post-resonance failures. In 4 cases, individuals previously cleared by all available screening protocols were later identified as activation focal points, not peripheral casualties. Retrospective genomic analysis. Using Borealis-era microweave modeling and revised mitochondrial coherence mapping, analysts identified a shared anomaly across the reclassified cases. Key features included exceptionally stable mitochondrial regulation, complete suppression of predatory phenotype expression, absence of resonance bleed signatures, epigenetic structures consistent with active inhibition, not dormancy. The suppression mechanism exhibited lattice-like coherence, self-maintaining, and energy-dependent. Analyst note: this isn't inactivity, it is restraint. Failure mode identification. When suppression failed, failure was sudden, global, irreversible. There was no evidence of gradual activation, hunger phase, psychological fragmentation. All atavistic traits manifested simultaneously. This failure pattern does not correspond to any previously documented carrier class. The committee formally designated the event catastrophic unquieting. Post-activation characteristics. Post-unquieting subjects demonstrated immediate situational awareness, high executive function, controlled predatory behavior, tactical decision-making under stress. Notably absent were panic responses, identity confusion, emotional distress. Field reports consistently note, quiet marker subjects do not awaken, they resume. Relationship to P0 and resonance. Quiet markers are not dependent on resonance for activation. However, resonance fields associated with P0 destabilize suppression mechanisms at significantly greater distances than observed in standard carriers. Hypothesis, unconfirmed. Quiet markers may represent a phylogenetically older expression state, adapted for prolonged concealment within non-atavistic populations. Resonance does not create the condition, it removes the margin of safety. Operational implications. 1. Pre-Borealis clearance records are no longer reliable indicators of non-atavistic status. 2. Quiet marker identification is currently possible only through post-activation analysis. 3. Long-term observation protocols must assume silent carriers. 4. Borealis escalation models must account for non-signaling activation vectors. Final note entered into record. The absence of noise was misread as safety. It was concealment under ideal conditions. End of Addendum 7C. Defense Applied Recombination Biology Division, DARBD. Joint Oversight, Shadow Concord, Clearance, Obsidian, Document Status, Crisis Synthesis. Date, 2nd of October, 2026. Distribution, Restricted. Leadership, Contingency Planning. Title: Containment Failure Brief, Global Atavistic Escalation. Resonance and Quiet Marker Unquieting. Reference Events: P0 Escape, January 2026. Initial Resonance Manifestation. Romania Resonance Event. Global Quiet Marker Unquieting Cascade. Executive Overview. This brief addresses the irreversible escalation of atavistic expression events following sustained resonance exposure and widespread quiet marker failure. What began as isolated, containable anomalies has transitioned into a distributed, self-propagating crisis. Containment is no longer a matter of secrecy. It is now a matter of crowd dynamics, information velocity, and mass psychological destabilization. Phase 1. Resonance Emergence, January to February 2026. Following the escape of P0, resonance manifested as a low-level, non-local field effect. Initial impacts included elevated activation rates among known carriers, increased severity of post-activation phenotypes, breakdown of suppression mechanisms in high-proximity zones. At this stage, events remained geographically clustered, field teams successfully enforced silence, public explanations remained effective. DARBD assessed the situation as manageable. This assessment was incorrect. Phase 2. Quiet Marker Unquieting, March through May 2026. The first quiet marker unquietings occurred outside known carrier populations. Key characteristics: no prodromal indicators, no prior flags, no predictive behavioral markers, full expression within minutes. These events occurred in civilian environments, transit hubs, workplaces, and private residences. Subjects previously cleared as non-carriers began manifesting advanced atavistic phenotypes, often exceeding baseline carriers in control and efficiency. The assumption that atavistic risk could be screened out collapsed. Phase 3. Containment Saturation, June through July 2026. By mid-2026, incident frequency exceeded containment capacity. Key failures included insufficient response teams, delayed interdiction windows, jurisdictional conflicts, competing national secrecy frameworks. Civilian footage began circulating faster than takedowns could occur. Independent analysts correlated incidents across borders. Language patterns stabilized across platforms. The Internet did not reveal the phenomenon, it pattern matched it. Phase 4. Pandemic Level Expression, August 2026. Atavistic expression events reached pandemic scale frequency. Characteristics included multi-city activation clusters, secondary activation via proximity stress, copycat violence driven by misinformation, vigilante responses against suspected carriers, collateral deaths unrelated to actual Atavus expression. Quiet markers were disproportionately represented among high-impact incidents. These events were filmed, live-streamed, and occurred in crowded public spaces. They could not be plausibly reframed. Failure of obscuration. Suppression mechanisms failed due to volume of recordings, mirrored uploads, encrypted dissemination, civilian forensic analysis, emergency responder leaks. Censorship attempts accelerated distrust. Public psychological response. Observed reactions include mythologization, religious and apocalyptic framing, false symptom identification, violence against innocents, population movement away from hot zones. The public no longer asks if something is happening, they ask how long it has been hidden. Government realization. By late August 2026, multiple governments independently concluded, this is not terrorism, this is not mass psychosis, this is not containable through secrecy. This is a biological atavistic emergence event at civilizational scale. Coordination transitioned from covert influence to emergency stabilization. The era of denial ended by exhaustion. Concluding assessment. Resonance created the conditions. Quiet markers supplied the acceleration. The internet removed the lid. This is not an invasion, it is a reappearance. Final entry. We did not fail to contain it. We succeeded for as long as physics, biology, and human communication allowed. End of brief. House Varn internal circular. Distribution, inner coils only. Clearance, blood seeded. Date, 11th September 2026. Archive status, sealed. Unauthorized duplication prohibited. Subject, on the end of veil conditions. We write this without embellishment. The veil is no longer intact. This is not a failure of secrecy, nor a lapse in discipline, nor the consequence of any single breach. It is the predictable outcome of scale exceeding tradition. What we face is not exposure, it is saturation. Historical context for the record. The houses have survived empires, inquisitions, industrialization, and global war. We survived because the population was slow, communication was localized, records decayed, fear fragmented narratives. We were never invisible. We were unconfirmable. Those conditions no longer apply. Current state. Resonance has altered the operating environment permanently. Quiet marker unquietings have introduced a variable we did not cultivate and cannot fully predict. Atavistic expression now occurs in public, on camera, without warning, at a frequency that resists narrative suppression. The human world is no longer blind. It is watching in real time. On Darby D and government partners. The agencies believe this is a crisis of governance. They are mistaken. Governments fail when belief collapses. We fail when pattern control collapses. The internet has become a hostile archive. It remembers, it correlates, it mirrors, it does not forget. No denial lattice can erase millions of witnesses comparing notes. On quiet markers. Quiet markers represent a structural shock. They were not bred, they were not trained, they were not sworn. They do not belong to us. Their emergence confirms what some denied. The old blood learned to hide without permission. Quiet markers do not seek houses. They do not wait for instruction. They resume. Strategic admission. The era of absolute concealment has ended. This does not mean extinction. It does not mean surrender. It does not mean revelation on human terms. It means adaptation under exposure. The question is no longer how do we stay hidden. The question is, who do we allow to define what we are? Directives, effective immediately. 1. Cease reliance on veil-only protocols. Assume observation in all engagements. 2. Discontinue quiet marker recruitment attempts. Unauthorized control efforts will be sanctioned. 3. Preserve lineage archives. Public history will be rewritten. Our history must not be. 4. Prepare for declarative containment models. Some truths may require framing rather than denial. 5. Remember this. Humans fear what they can name. They destroy what they believe they understand. Final entry, unsigned. We were kings of the dark because darkness was empty. It is no longer empty. If the world must learn that predators exist, we will ensure it learns which predators endure. End circular. At first, people thought the worst part was the violence. The videos were bad enough. Grainy phone footage of impossible strength, of men and women moving too fast, of eyes reflecting light wrong, of blood where blood should not be. Those clips spread like any disaster footage did. Shared, argued over, denied, replayed until numbness set in. But violence was familiar. Humanity knew how to process violence. What broke the world came later. It started with documents. Not manifestos, not threats, internal memos. They appeared on forums, then mirrors, then everywhere at once. Dry, precise language stripped of drama. They spoke of houses, of lineage, of veils, of protocols that did not read like the improvisations of a new crisis, but like maintenance routines for something very old. People noticed the dates first. Centuries appeared casually in the margins, references to previous concealment cycles, to industrial era adjustments, to pre-national governance conditions. No one bragged, no one explained. The authors wrote as if continuity itself were mundane. The question changed overnight. It was no longer what is happening. It became how long has this been happening? Historians were the first to feel the chill. They began cross-referencing instinctively, almost compulsively. Trial records, unexplained disappearances, noble bloodlines that ended too cleanly, treaties that collapsed for reasons never fully explained. Patterns emerged that could not be unseen. Names reappeared across centuries like fingerprints. Symbols once dismissed as folklore now read like administrative marks. Folklore itself began to rot under scrutiny. Stories about monsters no longer looked like superstition. They looked like leaks, corrupted eyewitness accounts filtered through fear and religion and time. The Atavus were no longer framed as creatures. They were framed as institutions. Governments tried to speak. Press conferences were held. Carefully neutral terms were floated. Non-human actors, biological minorities, pre-modern survival populations. None of it held. Language designed to soothe collapsed under its own weight. Because one fact could not be negotiated. You do not survive this long by accident. If the Atavus had endured empires, inquisitions, industrialization, world wars, then they had not merely hidden, they had participated. The implication detonated trust everywhere at once. People did not just lose faith in governments, they lost faith in history itself. Wars were reinterpreted, leaders reassessed. Entire national myths curdled as the idea took hold that humanity had never been alone in steering its fate. And no one could say where human influence ended and something else began. Online, the fracture became visible. The internet did what it always did. It sorted fear into tribes. Some called for coexistence, arguing that survival proved legitimacy. Others demanded extermination, framing the Atavus as parasites who had stolen the human story. Religious movements splintered overnight, scripture rewritten in comment sections and live-stream sermons. Millions claimed they had always known, clinging to prophecy as proof they had not been fooled. The most dangerous were the betrayed. They saw conspiracy everywhere. Bloodlines became suspect. Family trees were interrogated. Old photographs were scrutinized for faces that appeared too often across generations. Innocents were accused, some were killed. Ironically, true Atavus incidents declined in certain regions. Not because the threat had passed, but because humans had turned on one another first. Panic no longer needed monsters to feed it. The breaking point came quietly. Not with a new attack, not with a declaration. It came with a sentence that spread without attribution, passed from post to post like a whispered truth. If they were organized before we had nations, then history was never fully ours. That idea hollowed people out. The fear was no longer of death or even domination. It was the fear of irrelevance, that humanity had been a junior partner in its own civilization, never fully aware of who else had been seated at the table. The Atavus did not need to announce themselves. Their age did it for them. By the time official channels acknowledged the existence of non-human organized actors, the damage was done. The world had already learned the deeper truth. The unquietings were frightening, but they were survivable. What humanity could not survive, at least not unchanged, was the knowledge that the dark had been inhabited all along, and that the predators within it had names, rules, archives, and patience. The monsters had not arrived. They had been waiting, and now, finally, they no longer needed to hide. The emergency session was never supposed to be broadcast. That was the first mistake. The chamber filled anyway. Delegates stiff, translators pale, security layered so thick it bordered on ritual rather than protection. No flags were removed, no symbols altered. Humanity insisted on its stage. Then the lights dimmed. No one announced the speaker. The figure appeared on every screen simultaneously. Not imposing, not monstrous, not visibly inhuman. If anything, the restraint was unsettling. Neutral posture, stillness that felt practiced across centuries rather than rehearsed. When it spoke, it did not raise its voice. And every translator paused, just for a fraction of a second, before continuing. Televised address, transcript excerpt. Representatives of the human polities, we speak to you now because the conditions that once made silence useful no longer exist. You have observed us. You have named us. You have inferred what you could from fragments. This is sufficient. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The speaker did not acknowledge it. We are not an emergence. We are not an infection. We are not a collapse of your species. We are a lineage that predates your nations and has endured alongside them. The phrase alongside them landed harder than any threat. You call us Atavus. We have had other names in other centuries, spoken with more fear and less accuracy. We will not correct your myths. They served their purpose. Outside the chamber, millions watched. Comment sections froze, then flooded. The address continued without interruption. Your current crisis did not begin because we chose revelation. It began because concealment ceased to be structurally possible. Resonance did not create us. It revealed us at scale. Several delegates were already taking notes they would later deny writing. You fear that we have ruled you. This is incorrect. We have influenced, intervened, and occasionally constrained. We have also withdrawn, endured, and adapted. Your history is yours. It is simply not yours alone. That sentence would be replayed for weeks. The speaker folded its hands, not in supplication, but in closure. You are not facing extermination, nor are you being offered salvation. You are facing coexistence under observation. A pause, deliberate. Some of you will demand war. Some will demand submission. Most will demand certainty. We offer none of these. A delegate attempted to interrupt. The feed did not cut, but the audio never reached the microphones. Understand this instead. We survived because we learned restraint before you learned governance. Those among us who failed at that lesson are the ones you have already seen. A subtle distancing, quiet marker unquietings reframed without apology. We are not united. We are not innocent. We are not leaving. The final lines were spoken slowly, carefully calibrated for translation. You have discovered that the dark was inhabited. Now you must decide whether you will respond as a species that panics or as one that adapts. The speaker inclined its head, not a bow. This address will not be repeated. We will be watching your response. The feed cut. Immediate aftermath. No applause, no shouting, no explosion, just silence, followed by the loudest panic the world had ever experienced. Markets crashed within minutes. Governments issued contradictory statements within the hour. Religious leaders split publicly on live broadcasts. Military readiness levels spiked without clear targets. But the most disturbing reaction came from civilians. Not fear, recognition. The Atavus had not sounded like invaders. They had sounded like neighbors who had finally acknowledged the fence was gone. And humanity understood, all at once, the true meaning of the second horror. The monsters were not here to conquer. They were here to stay seen. No one summoned her. That detail mattered, though many would later pretend otherwise. Summoning implied ritual, intention, consent, things that made the moment feel smaller and more human than it was. What occurred instead was closer to pressure equalizing in a sealed system that had been overfilled for too long. There were simply too many of them now. Too many awakenings, too many quiet markers resuming without lineage, without instruction, without restraint. Too many latent carriers activating into a world that no longer knew how to pretend they did not exist. The Atavus population did not grow in a way that could be governed. It fractured outward, uncontrolled. The old architecture, houses, vales, concords, had been designed for scarcity, for a few predators hidden among billions of prey. That assumption died in 2026. By the time humanity learned the Atavus were organized, the Atavus themselves were already losing control of that organization. Quiet markers resumed without warning and without guidance. They did not seek houses, they did not recognize authority. They acted with clarity, but no doctrine. Predators who remembered how to hunt, but not why to stop. Latent carriers activated en masse, pushed over the threshold by resonance fields that no longer dispersed. Violence increased, not because the Atavus were evil, but because no one was coordinating restraint. The houses attempted intervention. They failed. Not through incompetence, but through irrelevance. Lineage meant nothing to those who had never been taught it. Authority meant nothing to those whose blood had resumed before their minds could catch up. The pale convergence, the slow alignment the houses had predicted and feared, arrived as a population explosion without hierarchy, predation without pattern, and that was the one condition the old world had never survived. Buried deep within Atavus biology, older than houses, older than memory, existed a mechanism no doctrine fully explained. Not a law, not a command, a fallback. When atavistic expression exceeds cultural containment, when resonance saturates carriers faster than lineage can train them, when quiet markers outnumber those who remember restraint, the system does not collapse, it recenters. P0 was never merely the first of her kind. She was the keystone. P0 does not experience her return as a decision. Across continents, across millions of bodies, something begins to tighten, not physically, but internally. A pressure in the blood, a subtle alignment of impulses that had been screaming out of tune. Hunger synchronizes, dreams converge, aggression dulls at the edges. Not obedience, recognition. For the first time since her escape, P0 feels the full weight of what she is carrying. Countless atavistic impulses colliding without structure, quiet markers resuming violently because no one taught them how not to. Children killing because no one taught them why restraint mattered. This was the scenario she was designed to prevent. Containment had delayed it, secrecy had slowed it, delegation had postponed it, but nothing had stopped it. There was only one remaining stabilizer: presence. The houses feel it first. Across safe houses, archives, subterranean halls, senior Atavus experience a sudden biological quiet, as if a background hum has been muted. Resonance noise dampens, instinctive aggression recedes. Some fall to their knees without knowing why. They do not speak her name. They do not need to. Darby D instruments register it hours later. Resonance fields stop expanding and begin collapsing inward, reorganizing instead of amplifying. Activation curves flatten, not because awakenings cease, but because chaos is being overridden. The pale convergence stops being explosive. It becomes coherent. And somewhere, no one can agree where at first, P0 steps back into the world. Not as a broadcast, not as a symbol, as a body. She appears in daylight. That detail alone will haunt humanity. No storm, no theatrics. Satellite imagery captures her crossing open ground, unhurried, unarmed, flanked by nothing but silence. Drones lose signal as they approach, not through interference, but through synchronization errors. Systems trying to resolve a pattern too stable to triangulate. She does not hide. She does not rush. By the time the first human authority reaches her, an armored convoy stalled at a distance no one can explain, everyone involved already knows something fundamental has shifted. Weapons are raised. They feel ridiculous. The officer who steps forward is not brave enough to be heroic, nor frightened enough to flee. He is exhausted, hollowed out by months of chaos and a certainty that whatever rules once governed this world are already broken. Identify yourself, he says, because protocol still exists even when belief does not. P0 looks at him, not through him, not above him, at him. When she speaks, it is aloud, not into minds, not through resonance, but through air and sound. I have already been identified, she says. Her voice is calm, not commanding, not maternal, certain. You call me P0, she continues. That designation is acceptable. Every recorder in range captures the words. Every analyst will later agree on the same unsettling detail. She sounds like someone who has been answering this question for a very long time. I did not come to rule you, P0 says, before anyone can ask the question forming in every human mind. I did not come to conquer you. She gestures, not dramatically, but precisely, toward the horizon, where resonance once burned unchecked. I came because my absence became lethal. The officer swallows. What do you want? He asks. P0 considers this. I want my kind to survive exposure, she answers. And I want yours to survive us. There is no threat in the statement. That is what makes it unbearable. Humanity will later argue endlessly about what P0 is. Queen, overmind, God, controller, all of it wrong. P0 is not ruling the Atavus. She is preventing collapse. And that is the moment, standing in front of a creature that could have hidden but chose not to, when human authority understands the true shape of the future. Coexistence is no longer a political choice. It is a biological negotiation. And the progenitor has returned not to end the world, but to keep it from tearing itself apart. In the months after P0 returned, when the world stopped burning long enough for people to breathe again, the question surfaced everywhere at once. Not in protests, not in speeches, in quieter places, in closed hearings, in hospital rooms, in Darby D offices where no one slept anymore. It was never asked aloud at first. It was implied. Would any of this have happened if we had not dug her out of the ice? The initial consensus came quickly, because it had to. No. Resonance, the report said, was a contingent phenomenon. P0's extraction destabilized a system that had reached a long, unnatural equilibrium. The quiet markers, once inert, failed only when resonance fields stripped away suppression. This version was clean, comforting. It framed the disaster as a single catastrophic error, a dig site, a breach, a decision made by people with names and signatures. Humanity preferred this answer. It meant the world had broken because of one mistake, not because of something deeper. It did not survive scrutiny. Quiet markers, it turned out, predated Borealis by centuries. Historical autopsies, where records existed, showed suppression failures long before modern science had words for them. Isolated monsters, sudden massacres, Entire villages erased and quietly reclassified as plagues or wars. Rare, localized, containable, but real. Latent carriers had always existed. They activated occasionally. They burned out. They were buried, mythologized, forgotten. P0 had not created the phenomenon. She had accelerated it. The most unsettling analysis came from a place no one expected. From P0 herself. Not as a declaration, but as an answer to a question posed by someone who had lost too much to be afraid of her anymore. If we had not found you, they asked, would the world still have broken? P0 did not answer immediately. When she did, it was not absolute. Yes, she said. Later. The ice was not a prison. It was a pause. P0 had been isolated by chance, not design. A geological accident that removed a stabilizing node from a system that had adapted around her absence. For millennia, the Atavus compensated. They learned concealment. They built houses. They enforced restraint culturally instead of biologically. It worked until population, communication, and global interconnection reached a point where silence was no longer sustainable. Resonance was not caused by her excavation. It was caused by density. Too many carriers in too small a world. Too many quiet markers suppressing instincts they were never meant to suppress indefinitely. P0 did not trigger the collapse. She arrived just before it. Had she remained buried, quiet markers would still have resumed, slowly. Latent carriers would still have activated, quietly. The internet would still have pattern matched the truth. Human violence would still have found targets. There would have been no pale convergence. There would have been no stabilizing presence. Only fragmentation. Only extinction. Either of the Atavus or of the trust that held human civilization together. The ice did not save the world. It postponed the reckoning. So the question never truly goes away. It changes. Not, did we cause this, but, did we arrive too early or too late? Because the most disturbing possibility is this. The pale convergence was not an accident. It was a missed inevitability, forced into the open by modernity. And P0 was not the origin of the crisis. She was the only reason it did not end worse. The world did not break because humanity found the progenitor. It broke because humanity had finally built a world where she could no longer remain hidden. The world does not end. That disappoints many people. It does not burn, reset, or kneel before a single authority, human or otherwise. Instead, it does what it has always done after catastrophe. It reorganizes, unevenly, with resentment and ingenuity in equal measure. The Atavus did not replace humanity. They forced it to renegotiate reality. The first global shift is linguistic, not moral. Atavus are not granted citizenship in the human sense. They are classified as a non-human sapient lineage with conditional autonomy. This avoids granting rights that humans fear losing while preventing open extermination. In practice, Atavus communities operate under special jurisdiction zones. Crimes involving Atavus are adjudicated by hybrid courts. Feeding, predation, and movement are regulated, not banned. This arrangement satisfies no one completely, which is why it holds. Atavus no longer hide that they exist. They still hide where, how many, and how coordinated they are. Human surveillance improves, Atavus counter-surveillance evolves. The relationship becomes less predator-prey and more adversarial coexistence, like states that do not trust one another but cannot afford war. The houses do not disappear. They recede, from rulers to stabilizers, advisors, and sometimes saboteurs. The most profound change is not political, it is existential. Humanity no longer believes itself to be the sole intelligent agent shaping history. This creates a collapse in exceptionalism. A rise in fatalism in some cultures, a surge of humility in others. New philosophies emerge that treat humanity as a dominant species, not a chosen one actor among several evolutionary outcomes. This does not weaken civilization, it matures it. Religions do not vanish, they reinterpret. Some declare the Atavus demonic, some declare them pre-Adamic, some declare them irrelevant to salvation, some quietly admit they were never prepared for neighbors. The most resilient traditions survive by downgrading certainty and emphasizing ethics over cosmology. Dogma dies faster than belief. Within a generation, Atavus appear in media, not glorified, not hidden. Children grow up knowing some people aren't fully human. Fear shifts from the unknown to the predictable. The horror fades, the discomfort remains. Biological science is where the world truly changes. Atavus biology breaks assumptions that had governed science for centuries. Discoveries include resonance-aware mitochondria, epigenetic inheritance across generations, adaptive suppression mechanisms, quiet marker analogs, metabolic pathways previously thought impossible. Human biology is no longer seen as complete. It is one branch, not the trunk. Scientific advancements accelerate dramatically. Regenerative medicine, neuroplasticity control, trauma recovery, metabolic efficiency, longevity stabilization, not immortality. But there is a hard line. Anything that risks atavistic crossover is tightly controlled. Human fear is no longer of death. It is of becoming something else without consent. The quiet marker, once a horror, becomes a template. Scientists learn how suppression works without collapse. Applications include controlled aggression dampening, PTSD stabilization, addiction interruption, extreme stress tolerance. The irony is not lost on anyone. Humanity learns self-control from a predator lineage. P0 does not rule, she anchors. As generations pass, her presence becomes less necessary. Atavus stability becomes inherited rather than enforced. Resonance fields weaken naturally. She transitions from existential necessity to living keystone to historical constant. Children born long after the Pale Convergence know her name. They do not fear it. That is how she knows she will one day be obsolete. Some things do not improve. Black market blood economies persist. Extremist movements target both species. Hybrid crime becomes harder to police. Some humans still want extermination. Some atavists still want dominance. But the difference is this. No one can pretend the other side is imaginary anymore. That alone reduces catastrophe. If the old world believed safety came from isolation, the new world learns survival comes from managed proximity. Not trust, not harmony, calibration. Humanity did not inherit the earth alone. It simply took this long to notice the other inheritors. The following is an excerpt from the book Interviews with the Mother. I am often asked, indirectly, whether I regret being found. Humans rarely ask this question aloud. They embed it in others. Was it necessary? Was it inevitable? Was there another way? They want a verdict that assigns weight cleanly, so they can set it down. I do not give them one. Time feels different now. Not slower, not faster, simply wider. The noise that once filled my awareness has thinned. Where there were once millions of unaligned impulses clawing at one another, there is now rhythm. Not harmony, never that, but structure. The children who woke screaming no longer scream. The quiet markers no longer rupture themselves against silence. The blood remembers its limits again. This is what they call peace. It is not. It is maintenance. I remember the ice, not as confinement as they imagine, but as stillness, pressure, weight, time reduced to sediment. I did not sleep. I waited. Waiting is not passive when you are built to endure it. When I was removed from the ice, I felt the world before I saw it. The density, the crowding, the saturation of signals stacked atop one another with no release. Too many of us, too aware, too close. I understood then what no one else could yet articulate. The system had already failed. They did not break the world by finding me. They found me because the world had finally grown loud enough to hear itself tearing. The houses believed they were rulers. They were not. They were custodians, improvising in my absence, doing remarkably well with tools never meant to replace biology. I do not judge them for mistaking endurance for authority. Humans mistake the same thing constantly. Both species build narratives where necessity looks like choice. I walk openly now. This still unsettles them. They expect distance, altitude, symbolism, thrones, screens, separation. They expect power to withhold itself. I learned long ago that distance breeds mythology. Presence breeds adjustment. They watch me closely. Satellites still track my movement. Committees still convene. Someone, somewhere, is always preparing for a version of the future where I become a problem again. That is appropriate. I would do the same. Do I guide the Atavus? No. I anchor them, a difference humans struggle to recognize. I do not issue commands. I do not unify minds. I do not erase conflict. I reduce destructive variance. I keep the blood from forgetting itself entirely. Without me, they would fragment. Without them, I would be irrelevant. This is not hierarchy. It is mutual survival pressure. Humans still ask, quietly now, whether the pale convergence could have been avoided. I tell them the truth when they are ready to hear it. Avoided? No. Delayed? Yes. Contained forever? Never. Your world became too connected, too observed, too fast. Secrets decay faster than biology adapts. You build a planet where silence could not survive, and so neither could we. Sometimes I stand in places where no one recognizes me. Markets, transit halls, edges of cities rebuilt after panic. I watch children, human and otherwise, learning rules that did not exist when I was first named. They do not fear me. That is not progress. Fear sharpens attention. What matters is that they are no longer surprised by one another. Surprise is where catastrophes hide. If there is regret in me, it is this. I returned too late to prevent suffering, but not too late to prevent extinction. That is the narrow margin existence often allows. If history remembers me as a queen, it will be wrong. If it remembers me as a god, it will be lazy. If it remembers me at all, let it be this. I was what happened when a system finally exceeded its tolerance for fragmentation. I did not end the world. I kept it from tearing itself into incompatible pieces. And when I am no longer needed, when restraint becomes inherited again rather than imposed by proximity, I will leave. Not into ice, into irrelevance. That, too, is a form of peace. Codex Ultima, entry theta null. Status, permanent. Era marker, post-pale convergence. Access, unrestricted. Archive copy. We record this not as prophecy, but as notice. The pale convergence did not end with extinction. It ended with integration. Two lineages, once predator and prey, later secret and sovereign, now occupy a shared biosphere under negotiated tension. This alone would not merit a final entry. What merits it is what the convergence produced. On the nature of the system now present. Earth is no longer a biologically singular world. It supports multiple sapient lineages, resonance-aware life, hybrid governance structures, a stabilized predatory inheritance integrated into civil order, a historical memory of existential exposure and survival. This planet has undergone sudden revelation without collapse, species-level negotiation under stress, rapid post-catastrophe adaptation, long-term equilibrium following disclosure. These are not common outcomes. They are filters. On predation and restraint. Predation did not vanish here. It was domesticated. Restraint was not imposed through dominance, but inherited through necessity. Violence became inefficient. Secrecy became obsolete. Chaos became metabolized into structure. The result is not peace. It is readiness without panic. A world that has already survived learning it was not alone does not react to contact the way naive worlds do. On the progenitor effect. The progenitor no longer governs. Her role is complete. What remains is more dangerous than her presence ever was. A population that remembers convergence. A biosphere accustomed to coexistence under surveillance. A civilization that understands it is not exceptional. A species that no longer collapses when its narrative is threatened. This world has already lost its illusions. Illusion loss is the most violent transition most civilizations never survive. On signals and observation. This entry exists because detection is inevitable. Earth now emits anomalous biosignatures, resonance harmonics inconsistent with single lineage evolution, technological artifacts shaped by non-human cognition, cultural outputs that assume plural intelligence. Any species capable of interstellar observation will notice this world eventually. When they do, this record will already exist. Advisory, non-hostile. To any intelligence capable of interpreting this archive. Do not mistake this world for a young one. Do not mistake coexistence for weakness. Do not mistake restraint for passivity. This planet has already survived. Internal revelation, predator disclosure, biological divergence, historical invalidation, the collapse of supremacy myths. It did not unify through conquest. It unified through survival calibration. Final note. Earth does not seek contact. It does not seek conquest. It does not seek guidance. But it will not fracture merely because it is observed. It has already been watched from within. Closing line, archival standard. This world learned what it was by discovering what else lived beside it. Any intelligence approaching it should ask itself a simple question. Are we prepared to be seen by something that already survived being seen? End Codex, Veil era closed. Convergence stable. Addendum, archival anomaly. This entry was not found incomplete. It was found acknowledged. Timestamp variance indicates a confirmation signal was recorded after the codex was sealed and before any known human or Atavus transmission protocol could have accessed the archive. No originating vector was identified. No language match was required. No reply was returned. Only a single notation exists in the system log. Receipt confirmed. Source, extrasolar. Intent, undeclared. The archive has not been accessed since. Final line, uncatalogued. Author unknown. Observation does not imply curiosity. Acknowledgement does not imply contact. But nothing capable of understanding this record will arrive unprepared. End record. Archive status, locked. Outbound signals, none. The veil did not fall. It was noticed. And somewhere beyond the dark between systems, something now knows exactly what kind of world Earth has become.